Hey everyone, sorry for the delay. Just got in from the rain. We'll be starting in a few minutes, not very long from now. I need to eat first. But we have a few things we'll be going through, so let me know how the audio is. I was playing around with it last night, so hopefully it's a bit clearer, but sometimes it's very quiet. In the meantime, though, that works. We'll be starting shortly. Alright, sorry about the delay. As I don't feel like I'm gonna pass out from low blood sugar, I think we're good to go. Alright. It does sound a bit like Shinra, doesn't it? But this is actually from Final Fantasy VIII, so close but no cigar. Alright, sorry about the delay. I don't feel like I'm gonna pass out. Apparently my phone is playing this. Interesting. Alright. So we got a couple of things to cover here. I actually need a book first. One moment. This will come to bear shortly. But we'll warm up a bit first. With some nice, relaxing court testimony. Alright. Don't be joking about that. I almost did pass out. I'm allowed to joke from that. I passed out from low blood sugar before. It's not fun. I am not joking at all. Okay, anyways. This is 4 hours long. We're not going to go through the whole thing. I just want to see a little bit of this to get the tenor of it. This is the Kyle Rittenhouse's full testimony. I don't... Oh, no comments, of course not. I don't anticipate it's going to go for that long. But we'll go through that. And then we have a couple other things I might look at. I will be responding to Perspective Philosophy's impolite remarks. We might go over the School of Life Hegel video. Maybe the Rousseau video. Maybe a couple of them. Because that's like shooting fish in a barrel. And then this is a bit unusual, but Keith Woods actually has a video. And I'm not a fan of Keith Woods at all. But Keith Woods has a video on a book that's published by Imperium Press called Nemesis, the Patron Theory of Politics, that I am curious about. More morbidly curious about than anything. I expect it to be a train wreck, but that should be interesting to go through in any case. It's no more controversial than going through Kaczynski in any case, which I will be doing at some point in the near future. But yeah, so we're going to go through Rittenhouse for a little bit, and then we'll see how we feel from there. Sound good? Alright, we'll turn the music off, because it's a bit ghoulish to be playing music during this. But let me know how the audio is, guys. It's pretty quiet. Let's turn this up. Let's turn this way up. It's muted or extremely quiet. You can't hear anything. That's odd. Okay, well, there's a limit to what I can do here, so let me rewind this. Let's try and fix this. Yeah, wow, that isn't going through at all, is it? Okay, let's give this a boost. I know how to do that now. Oh, shoot. Oh, why is it doing that? It's like, it's just resetting every single time, isn't it? Alright, let me know if this is better. That's still pretty quiet. Let's boost this a little bit more. We might have to put it down again afterwards, but it's at 500% now, so let's see how this works.
Please state your name, spelling your last name for the record.
Kyle Rittenhouse, Rittenhouse.
Kyle, where do you reside?
Walworth County.
How old are you?
18.
On August 25th of 20...
Is that still too low? It's not muted, guys. Like, I can see the audio here. Well, let's bring it up to 600%. It really is just like the quietest video. I don't know what the hell is wrong with PBS that their videos are so quiet. But that's... Okay, it's at 650%. I hope this deafens you. I hope this blows your eardrums out. That's where I'm at right now.
5th of 2020. Did you come to downtown Kenosha to look for trouble?
No.
Would you have shot Joseph Rosenbaum if he hadn't chased you trying to take your firearm?
Objection, reading.
Would you... I'll get to it.
Would you have shot him if he wasn't trying to take your firearm? Okay.
Are you a high school graduate?
Yes.
What high school?
Is that still too quiet? If I have to change the audio anymore, I'm going to be on trial like this next. Okay. Let me know if this works. I hate OBS so much.
Penn Foster Online High School.
Are you currently enrolled in any further studies?
I'm a college student studying nursing at Arizona State University.
Did you
1,000 it is. I swear to God. This is it, guys. This is it.
Who do you currently live with?
My mom and two sisters.
Directing your attention to August 25th, 2020, where did you reside?
Antioch, Illinois.
Do you remember the address?
286 Anita Terrace, apartment 104, Antioch, Illinois.
And who did you live with there?
My mother and two sisters.
What's your father's name?
Michael Rittenhouse.
Back on August 25th, 2020, where did he reside?
He lived in Kenosha, in the city of Kenosha, in the apartments behind the Pick and Save on 50th. On 50th.
Do you have any other family that's from Kenosha?
Yes.
What?
My grandmother, my aunt, my uncle, and cousins all live in the city of Kenosha.
Okay. There's been testimony in this trial about the
No, don't walk away from the camera. Oh, damn it.
Stage 28. You've seen that gun?
Yes.
Before August 25th of 2020, had that gun ever left the state of Wisconsin?
No.
Now, before this event happened on August 25th of 2020, did you have any hobbies?
Yes.
Tell the jury what you like to do.
Murder.
I was a swimmer. I enjoyed working. I was a lifeguard. Hanging out with friends, going to the beach. Just normal teenage stuff.
Were you a member of any groups, organized groups?
Yes.
What?
I was a police explorer for Grays Lake Police Department, and I was a firefighter EMT cadet for Antioch Fire Department.
Did you have any training in life-saving, anything like that?
Yes.
What?
I was a certified lifeguard. I am a certified lifeguard and swim instructor. I am certified in Stop the Bleed, CPR, AED, automatic external defibrillator, and basic life support.
Okay. On August 25th of 2020, where were you employed?
I was furloughed at the YMCA in Lindenhurst, Illinois, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I was working at the Recplex in Pleasant Prairie.
Okay. Recplex here in Kenosha County?
Yes.
Now, on the night of the 24th, did you come to downtown Kenosha?
Not downtown, but I came to Kenosha for work.
Okay. And after your shift at work completed, where did you go?
I went to Dominic Black's stepfather's house. I believe his name is Scott Dickhart. It's been a while since I've seen him.
Okay. And who is Dominic Black in relationship to you?
Him and Dominic Black and my sister Mackenzie Rittenhouse used to date.
Okay. And on the night of the 24th, were you aware of anything going on in Kenosha?
I knew there was protests, demonstrations, and riots going on in the later evening.
Okay. And how were you aware of that?
I saw videos on social media, on Facebook live streams, TikTok of. I saw the Car Source lot being burned down. The Car Source 1, what we've been referring to. I saw a police officer get assaulted. He had a brick thrown at his head. And I saw the mattress store owner get knocked out, and I believe his jaw was broken and had to be wired shut or something.
And you saw all of that on the 24th?
Yes.
Did you go to downtown Kenosha at that time and try and do anything about that?
No, I did not.
Directing your attention to the late morning of August 25th, 2020, did you have occasion to go downtown?
Did go to town in the morning of August.
Go there with?
I went there with
Okay, whoever's responsible for the audio visual on this, they need to be charged.
Dominic Black, my sister Mackenzie Rittenhouse, and Ray Dickhart.
And describe what you did.
We walked around for a little bit, and then I believe at around 11:30 noon, we ended up at Ruther Central High School, where we ended up cleaning graffiti for about, I want to say, an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Previously marked as Exhibit 131. Do you recognize that?
I do.
Could you describe what you see in that photo?
Towards the left in the olive green shirt, that's me, and then to my left, that's Ray Dickhart, and to my right, that's my sister Mackenzie Rittenhouse.
What are you doing there?
We're cleaning graffiti off of Ruther Central High School.
And were you getting paid to do this?
No, I was not.
And you see what the graffiti says?
Yes.
And you do what it said as you were cleaning it off?
Yes.
I won't repeat it. After you were done doing that, what did you do?
We went to the car source lot, the first location, and we were looking at the destruction of the burnt cars, and we saw the owner, Sam and Sal, I believe that's what they told us their names were.
And you saw, when we say car source, the one that you met Sam and Sal at is what we've been referring to as car source number 1?
Yes.
And that's the one that they just played a video of all the burnt out cars?
Yes.
Did you have any discussions with Sam and Sal?
Briefly, I offered my condolences, and I said if there's anything I can do, please reach out to me. He gave me his number. I gave him my number,
And you were with Dominic Black at that time?
I was.
And your sister?
Yes.
And what did you do after that?
After that, we walked back to, I believe, we parked our car by, you see the parking lot?
Do you have the pointer up there?
Yes. We parked our car right out in that corner, somewhere over there.
I can't see that far, so right. You're referring to the parking lot, which
You're a lawyer, you can't afford glasses?
is at the corner, 5th Sheridan East.
Correct.
And you had
That was mildly horrifying. Oh, I believe that signal was lost. Good God.
Yes.
okay, you can put the pointer down. And whose car did you get there in?
Dominic Black. Parking lot. We went to Black's stepfather's
Your tax dollars at work.
house again, and we hung out there for a little bit.
Okay. And did you ever that?
Evening around 3:34, Nick Smith called me, and Dominic.
Mr. Rittenhouse, what good is a testimony if you were unable to speak?
And when he called you, what was the nature of the call?
At first, Nick Smith wanted us to drive him to Chicago by O'Hare Airport, the suburbs of Chicago, because he wanted to buy a bulletproof vest. And Dominic said, okay, we'll drive him. And then he said, okay, I need you to pick me up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Okay. Did you go and pick him up eventually?
Yes, we actually, before we picked him up, we went to Jelensky's.
Okay. What did you do at Jelensky's?
We bought, Dominic wanted me to buy 2 rifle slings.
And did you?
I did.
One was for what?
One was for my rifle, and the other one was for Dominic's rifle.
Okay. And why did you care about your rifles that evening?
The reason for the slings were just so it's like a retainer, so if I'm helping somebody with first aid, I can just like dangle my rifle behind me, and I don't have to worry about somebody just randomly going and picking it up off the ground, just as like an extra measure so it won't be taken from the ground.
And what time did you go to Jelensky's?
I want to say about 2:30, but I don't know exactly for sure.
Okay. When did you first have contact with Nick Smith?
3:30. 3:15.
Okay.
3:15.
And was there any discussion regarding car source at that time?
Yes.
What?
Nick Smith, once we picked him up, he wanted to go to a bank to withdraw money. The bank was...
Yeah, so notice how he's trying to frame the rifle sling as purely like an aid, again, to administering first aid and whatnot. In the pictures I saw, well, I suppose that doesn't particularly matter, but he appeared to be brandishing it quite readily, well in advance of being pursued. Unless I'm mistaken about the context of those photographs. Like, the problem with this whole case is that it's obviously not murder in context, even if I would regard it as being ethically equivalent. Because he was being pursued, and he did have every reason to think that he would be grievously harmed if he didn't open fire on his pursuers. The problem is that by being in that crowd in the dark with the rifle being brandished about, well, there's like firecrackers and whatnot going on. Like, you're inviting that.
It's closed, and then he was like, hey, would you guys like to come with me and help watch over the car source, make sure there's no fires or anything? And Dominic said yes. I agreed. I said okay.
Was it self-defense? It was self-defense in context. The problem is that he was only in that context illegally, with a firearm that he wasn't allowed to be possessing. Sorry, by putting himself into that context with a firearm in the dark during a protest, he was courting a situation in which he would have to use it in self-defense. It's sort of like, he doesn't really need an analogy. Like, it's pretty clear. The thing is that once he's in that context and being pursued, it's like, what are you going to tell him to do? No, you made your bed, now you need to lie in it. You need to just accept whatever the crowd does to you. It's like, no, obviously not. But at the same time, he shouldn't have been there with the gun.
And then I said, here, Nick, I don't really need my bulletproof vest. I'm going to be helping people with first aid, so I gave him my bulletproof vest.
And by you giving him your bulletproof vest, did that stop the need to go to someplace by O'Hare Airport?
Yes.
Okay. And why does a 17-year-old kid have a bulletproof vest?
It was issued to me by the Grays Lake Police Department.
Okay. You didn't purchase it?
No, I did not.
And after you gave him your bulletproof vest, where'd you go?
We went back to Nick Smith's house where we parked Dominic.
Was the crowd armed? Yes, some people in the crowd were armed. There were people pursuing him, one of which did have some kind of handgun or something.
Black's car.
And then what did you do?
We walked from Mr. Smith's house. Once we parked at Nick Smith's house, we walked from Nick Smith's house to the car source 1, cutting through the Ruther Central backside parking lot, because Nick Smith lives on the same street of...
You don't have to say where Nick Smith
Okay.
lives. He lives within walking distance from here?
Yes.
Okay. And so you go to car source 1?
Yes.
And that's the burnt out one?
No, car source 2, my bad, across the street.
Okay. And at car source 2, that's where you spent most of the evening?
Yes.
Okay. When you first got to car source 2, the one at 59th and Sheridan, what happened?
The owners were there, Sam, Sal, and his father, and I believe, I think it was...
I disagree, Sarptiv, that it's even morally equivalent to first-degree murder. I think he was an idiot. I think this kid, like, what I'm getting from this testimony so far is that this is, even with coaching, he has a great amount of difficulty coming across as anything but quite a bit dim. I think he had fantasies of heroically fighting off somebody approaching him unprovocatively, violently, with full right. And he might find himself in a situation just like this, but in full confidence that he will come out unscathed because, it was just some violent hooligan who was trying to destroy property, and he was heroically defending the means of somebody else's livelihood. And I think, like, I don't think he's malevolent. I think he's profoundly stupid and delusional. The worst part about all of this is that, just as a result of the intensity surrounding the case, I don't think there's really any avenue for him to learn any lesson from this. He's just going to be a right-wing darling going forward.
It was his uncle there also. He was driving a van of some sort.
And what was the discussion?
Sam and Sal thanked us for coming out to help. And then Sal said, hey, why don't you guys hop in my car? If I remember correctly, it was either a white or black BMW or Mercedes. I don't recall exactly.
And why did he want you to get in his car?
He was going to drive us down to Car Source lot number 3.
Okay. And did you agree to get in his car?
I did.
And who went to Car Source number 3?
Me, Dominic Black, and Nick Smith.
And who was driving?
Sal.
And when you got there, what happened?
We got out and we hung around for a couple minutes, and then some people showed up. I now know who they are, but at the time I didn't.
The lady in the back's just asleep. Damn. I guess these are family
So
members.
it's been marked as Exhibit 3030. Do you recognize that exhibit?
I do.
And can you, Your Honor, can you go up there, please, and point out, can you point out the people who you knew before that picture was taken and name them?
Yes. This is. This is Sal, the owner. This is Ryan Balch. This is Joanne Fiedler. This is Justin Hamilton.
Photo of him on bail wearing a free as fuck shirt, giving the white power sign says otherwise. Can somebody send that to me on Discord? Because I missed that episode apparently. At best, he and his gang were trying to scare away the crowd and look cool doing it, and at worst, he and his gang were going for the same thing the defenders of quote-unquote stand your ground policy look for. Shouting, let's kill him, and running at the fellow with weapons is an open invitation to have damage done to you. Or are we talking about, we're not talking about Rittenhouse here. Yeah, I am curious about, those photographs of him giving a white power sign. That would be interesting. Although keeping in mind, that makes him malicious in an additional way. I don't think it necessarily bears on the shootings themselves, because he was being pursued in that case. It does change how we characterize his motives for being there. Like, I still think that it would be, again, like these delusions of glory or whatever. But then it changes from, oh, he's dehumanized his fantastical assailant, not just as, like, some criminal scum type thing, but also as, like, specifically a racialized figure. That becomes, it's the okay hand signal. Okay, you have to be careful, because, like, the okay hand signal is not racist. It's an O and a K, and that's all. It's when it's inverted that it's a P and it's a white power symbol. So, how does one join your Discord? Oh, I haven't updated the link yet. Let me do that quickly. I'll put it in the description. There. Okay, let's. Okay, there's a Discord link in the description now if you want to join. That's how you do that. And send me that picture. That would be helpful. Let's keep going.
This is Dustin Colette. This is Nicholas Smith. I don't recall his name.
Okay, hand signal was turned into a white power symbol by 4chan's poll. It's a hilarious psyop. Okay. We'll have to look into that stuff later, but we'll keep going with this for now.
This is me, and this is Dominic Black.
Okay. We've heard testimony. You can have a seat. We've heard testimony about you, Nick, and Dominic. You knew those individuals before August 25th of 2020?
I knew Nicholas Smith and Dominic Black.
Okay. You did not know the owner of CarSource previously?
I did not.
Was he being nice to you guys? Was he happy you were there? Was he mad at you for being there? Describe it.
He was happy we were there.
Okay. And you heard their testimony, the two owners. I believe that was Friday afternoon.
I did.
And did they give you permission to be there?
They did.
And the other individuals in this photograph, some of whom...
Okay, hang on. Alright, here we go. Here, let's center this a little bit. Free as fuck. Okay. That's a little conspicuous. Like, the way he's centering it doesn't look like a normal okay. But I don't know. But you know what? You know what you see here? See, he's doing an okay sign. But the person with his arm around his shoulder, he is doing the upside down okay sign. So that is sus. So Shimino, like, I take your point. Like, it is a bit more ambiguous in this, but the context of this photograph, it doesn't look great. We'll say that. It doesn't look great. So this, like, here's the thing. Even if Kyle Rittenhouse is just doing an okay hand signal, and I have no reason to think that he is in this context, because he's right next to somebody who's doing the other thing, he's hanging out with people who are doing the other thing. So it just doesn't look great. That's all.
Testified in this trial. 10 minutes before this photograph was taken, did you know any of them?
I did not.
Had you ever spoken to any of them?
No.
And when you were there, what was the idea? Was there a plan? What was going to happen?
Yes, the plan was to, I went down there to provide first aid. I brought my orange first aid kit, the fanny pack, and I also brought my Pelican box, which was filled with first aid stuff by my feet to provide first aid.
The orange box by your feet you refer to as a Pelican box?
Yes.
Did you have that before the 25th?
Yes.
Was it stocked?
Yes.
With things that you had bought and brought?
Yes.
And do you go with that every day, or is that because of the situation?
It was in the trunk of my car.
Okay. And the fanny pack, what's the situation with that?
It was my work bag. I brought it to work with me, and I would put it under my lifeguard booth.
Okay. And that had first aid supplies?
Yes.
Now, after the meeting here at 63rd and Sheridan Road, what's been referred to as CarSource 3, what happened?
After the photograph, I believe, I don't recall exactly, but there was about 2 or 3 vans that pulled up, like big vans with people inside of them.
Okay. And what was their role in this evening?
Well, they showed up and they wanted to protect the business, and I didn't really have a say in what everybody was doing. I was just there doing my first aid stuff, and then Ryan Ball said, "Hey, why don't you guys stay here, and we'll go down to the car source number 2."
Okay. And so the people, a group of people was going to stay at CarSource 3, and the people depicted in this photograph were going to go where?
Car source 2.
And is that what happened?
Yes.
And so at that point then, Sam and Sal had coverage, for lack of a better word, at both of their businesses to protect the property, correct?
Yes.
So you get down to Car Source 2, did all of these people go there?
Yes. Besides Sal, the owner, he did not.
Okay. During the night, was Sam and Sal...
Do you have, or are you pursuing a PhD in poli-sci, PS? I don't. No. I have no immediate plans. I would like to at some point, but at the moment, no. It's a big expense in time and resources, and it just doesn't make financial sense right now. To say nothing of the difficulty of actually getting in. The very concept he's a white supremacist is only the faintest of opaque traces of logic to it. I'd say my logic is a little more sound than this call for blood on the kid. I think the fact, again, like, I take your point, Shamino, but at the same time, we're talking about someone who runs in circles, where firing upon BLM protesters, which are in large measure black people, is the subject of fantasy. So, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's actually immaterial to the question here because he's not being tried for a hate crime, but the reason why this is being brought up is because what people are trying to determine, or what people are speculating on rather, is whether he was there because he was just a stupid kid with delusions of being a hero, or if in addition to that, he also hated certain ethnicities that were represented at the protest. So. Yeah. They should pay you, yeah. It's not just a matter of, with regards to the PhD thing, it's expensive even when you're covered, right? Unless you're going to some, like, they give you a pittance in most universities. Some places have, like, exorbitant awards for certain really weird niche things that probably shouldn't get them. But, like, generally speaking, the amount of money that most Canadian universities give PhD students is not fantastic.
There?
They were not.
They left you guys there.
Yes. I believe Nick Smith was in contact with them throughout the night. I'm not certain, but I believe they were.
And you get down there, were you able to get in and out of the business?
Yes.
How?
Sal, the owner, actually gave Nick Smith a set of keys.
Did you personally see that?
I did.
Did he give you any other direction regarding any equipment or anything like that?
He let us know where, like, the power washers and the fire. I think there was a single fire extinguisher in the building and some hoses, the hose hookups, just in case there was any fires we needed to put out at the lot.
Anything else about roof?
He showed I believe it was Dominic Black and Nick Smith, the two ladders that were there to get up on the roof.
Okay. And did you guys use those ladders?
I didn't personally, but the people that were on the roof did.
Okay. And you saw them use those ladders?
I didn't see them, but that's how they got up there.
Okay.
I conjecture if this kid was skinnier, had worse skin, and more stubble on his face, nobody would have any mercy for him whatsoever. I think he's getting by on being on appearing like a cute sort of suburban kid. I think that's carrying him a long way right now with a lot of people right now.
Where were you predominantly at Car Source 2?
I was in front of the Car Source 2.
Now, during the night at Car Source 2, did you stay there the whole time?
No.
When you would leave Car Source 2,
with mulch, and we would go ask if anybody needed any first aid assistance, and we would see if there were any fires, and we.
okay. Did you personally put out any fires?
I did.
Where?
I put one out at the church.
Can you use the pointer?
Okay, Shamino, here's the problem with your logic. So Shamino's saying if you were in a situation where you were surrounded by minorities and you were out to kill based on your racial beliefs and you only attack whites who assaulted you first, I suppose he could be a white supremacist, but the worst one. Here's the problem. I don't think anybody thinks that Kyle Rittenhouse went to the protest to hunt out racial minorities. The question is why he went to the protest in the first place, not who he chose to shoot while he was there. At the protest, he fired in self-defense because he was assaulted. The question is, though, why did he go? Why did he place himself into that situation? And if he placed himself into that situation, not just to protect property and not just for, like, innocent, like, you know, Superman defending his adopted parents' farm kind of thing, if he went there because he's seething with rage at the, from his vantage, the disgusting hordes of people who are, like, wrecking these neighborhoods, and he wants to, and, like, he imagines specifically in his head, we can conjecture, firing at one of them, then that's a problem, right? So, like, I don't think he was frothing at the mouth, looking for black people to kill at this protest. The question is, why was he at the protest with a gun? It's that simple. I don't think for a second that he would actually seek out somebody to kill. I think he was there with a gun, with the expectation that he would have to use it to defend himself when somebody approached him because he was carrying a gun. So, like, think about this for a second. Like, how about this? Picture this. So he just said he put out a fire, right? Okay. What if he puts out a fire while protesters are in the process of trying to set one? Well, there might be a scuffle. And if there's a scuffle, he now has justification on the same grounds that he is now characterized correctly, disturbingly, as acting in self-defense when he shot those people. He is now justified to fire at them on those same grounds. You see the issue here? Whereas if he wasn't wearing that gun, well, if he tried to put out a fire and somebody tried to prevent him from putting out a fire, there might be a scuffle. He might back away. He might even be killed. Like, that's a distinct possibility. But the immediate reaction to that isn't he fires bullets into the person he's scuffling with. Like, there's so much that's foggy here. The issue is, by bringing that rifle in, he made specific kinds of interactions possible that wouldn't have been if he hadn't.
So right here was where there was the demolishing. They were breaking some stuff down. But right here, I believe there was another building with an alleyway. It was either right here or right here. I don't remember fully. But there was a fire down the alleyway where they were trying to set the building and church on fire, and me and Mr. Balch, and I believe somebody else was with us. We went to go put that fire out.
Did you put it out?
We did.
Then what did you do?
Around that time, we saw Ruther Central High School on fire, the front doors, and we were walking north down Sheridan Road to go put the fire out.
Okay, to be clear, I don't even think that Rittenhouse was out to provoke an interaction. The issue is, I think he went there with a rifle expecting an interaction of a specific kind, which, of course, would be the justification for carrying a rifle in that setting. And so it begs the question. What calculation did you use to arrive at the notion that that was worth the potential cost? You went there to put out fires on doors, on garbage cans and whatever, with the expectation that you would likely have to shoot a stranger in the dark. Doesn't look good. And it's not even as simple as that, right? Because, like, here's the thing. I don't know what the mindset of the person who pursued Rittenhouse was. But, like, picture this. You're in the dark. You're hearing firecrackers going off. You know there's different groups around with rifles. You're on edge. The reason for the protest is because of cops killing black people. And then you see somebody brandishing a gun, walking around on the outskirts, possibly getting into altercations with other people in the crowd, and you hear crack. Like, what do you do? Oh, thank you. Like, what does that look like? Like, for all we know, the impulse driving the people who pursued him is the same impulse that might drive somebody with, like, a hero complex to rush, like, a school shooter or something. We have no idea. They're dead. But, like, all of these little things can concatenate in those circumstances, and they only could because he made himself present there illegally with a large, visible firearm.
And then somebody else put the fire out before we got to Luther
When
Central
you
High
say
School.
the front, is that right here on Civic Park?
No, sorry, that's my mistake. You're walking north on...
If you're anti-weapon, you consider anyone carrying a weapon to be a provocation rather than a clear sign of someone capable of self-defense. In the dark at a protest? No. Frankly, if I saw somebody at a protest in the dark with a rifle, I would be extremely on edge. And I'm not anti-weapon. Like, that's just stupid. There's no way to justify that. Even if his intentions are completely honorable, and that's a distinct possibility, because I don't know him. Maybe he's just a doofus who got in with the wrong crowd and never realized it and just ended up there in a stupid, like, whatever. That's fine. You're courting disaster doing that. Like, it's the height of irresponsibility. The second chasing happened also with knowledge someone had been shot down, murdered. Well, that's a good point, actually. And I've brought this up before. The initial guy who chased him, he was making a guess, right? A couple of guesses. One, he was guessing that the person he was pursuing wasn't going to fire at him and kill him. And two, he may have been making an assumption that that this person was a potential threat or something. Like, there was a reason to pursue him in the first place. That was an error in judgment on the person who chased him. But the people afterwards, they were pursuing somebody who killed somebody else in public. And then he killed somebody else in addition to that. Like, what I really hate here, that argument, people defending Rittenhouse paint the crowd as one hive mind. Yeah, exactly. No, there's a fog of war here. You being a member of that crowd, you only see a little bit in every single direction. You hear that somebody shot one of the protesters and they're running back towards the police line and they're shooting other people. Look, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the protesters were smart either. Like, there's stupidity on all sides. But there's a world of difference between shooting somebody who is, like... We're not talking about somebody standing in the clear light of day with, like, a bunch of his bros or whatever, just standing in front of some building saying, don't cross this line, dude, and whatever, and then somebody stupidly just charges the line and gets shot, and then chaos breaks out. That's one thing. We're talking about somebody alone, standing in the dark with a rifle, while, again, explosives are going off that I don't know how to distinguish between a firework and a gunshot. We have no idea what the mindset was of these people, and neither did Kyle. So, think of all the gambles he's taking here. Where the only possible outcome, if he fails one dice roll, is he needs to murder someone. What is he? I don't know what he's officially being charged with. My expectation is, like, manslaughter.
Sheridan, it's the side
I expect, though, he's going to get off scot-free. I don't think he's going to get charged.
of the building on Sheridan Road, towards the left when you're walking north.
In the general area where you tried to help remove graffiti earlier?
Yes, in that photo to the right.
Okay. And during the evening, was there any friction between your group and protesters/rioters?
No. The only type of stuff that happened was the person that attacked me first threatened to kill me twice.
Okay. And the person who threatened to kill you, we now know was Mr. Rosenbaum, correct?
Yes.
before August 25th of 2020, had you ever seen him before?
I did not.
Had you ever done anything to upset him?
No.
Now, you said he threatened to kill you twice.
Yes.
Describe the first time.
The first time was me and Ryan Balch were a little bit north, towards the north corner of 59th and Sheridan, and Mr. Rosenbaum was walking with a steel chain, and he had a blue mask around his face, and he was just mad about something. Me and Mr. Balch were asking people if they needed medical help, and then he screamed, sorry for my language, he screamed, "If I catch any of you fuckers alone, I'm going to fucking kill you."
And that was directed at you and Mr. Balch?
It was directed at both of us, what I believe.
And there was a second occasion where he threatened you?
Yes. The second time was outside of the car source. And I don't know if it was directed towards me, but I heard it. He said to, I believe it was Joanne Fiedler, Dustin, Colette, and another guy. He was screaming. He said, "I'm going to cut your fucking hearts out and kill." I'm not going to repeat the second word, but kill you, N-words.
Now, did you ever see Mr. Rosenbaum doing any physical property damage?
I did.
Where?
I saw him with, I now know to be Joshua Zeminski. I saw him tip that trailer over and the porta potty. I saw him do both. And I believe he tried to start the porta potty on fire. I don't know. I don't think he succeeded. But then I saw him with Mr. Zeminski. He was either helping start it or he was like throwing stuff on it. I don't know which one he was doing.
Where did you originally see that trailer?
That trailer was in the St. James Church parking lot. Sort of like right over here in like the backish corner, what I remember.
And did you see how it got from there to where it was put on fire?
It was pulled.
By whom?
It was several people that pulled it into the street, but I can't tell you definitely who pulled it into the street.
And you went down there and saw them starting a fire?
I didn't go down there. I was at the corner of the car source lot.
Okay. And you referred to Mr. Zeminski. Before August 25th of 2020, had you ever met Mr. Zeminski?
I have not.
Did you ever meet him since?
I have not.
Now, when you first saw Mr. Rosenbaum, was his top half of his body clothed or unclothed?
He was clothed with a blue mask the first time I saw him. Yeah, blue mask.
And what color was his shirt, if you remember?
A dark red-ish color.
Now, did you provide medical help to anyone?
I did.
Describe a couple of those occasions.
The first time I provided medical help to someone was this lady. I think she sprained her ankle or twisted. I don't know exactly. I'm not an expert on x-rays, or I wouldn't know.
He's providing x-rays.
She hurt her ankle and she was being carried by two gentlemen.
Busy man.
And I said, hey, before that I was just, but I was like, hey, do you need help? And she said yes, and I said, okay, let's go into the car source where I was. And I wrapped her ankle, and then she went on her way. And I let her know there was a hospital. I want to say southbound Sheridan, across the street from car source 3. Hospital was over there, and she should go get it.
Anybody else?
Yes.
What?
Somebody threw a chemical bomb. Actually, right after I heard, "I'm going to cut your hearts out" from Mr. Rosenbaum. I don't know who threw it, but somebody threw a chemical bomb. and Ryan Balch had some effects of it, so I helped Mr. Balch with being able to breathe, and I helped flush his eyes out and had him drink some water.
Okay. You, in the answer to the question just before, you said something about being pepper sprayed.
I did.
And where did that happen?
That happened at the car source, right, I believe it's the first time a big crowd of people were over.
If they were willing to attack him knowing he has a gun, why wouldn't they attack him without it? Well, you're assuming that they had any impetus to attack him if he didn't have a gun. Like, if they're attacking him, maybe they're attacking him because of the gun. That's my suspicion. As has been pointed out already, the person who was threatening Rittenhouse, allegedly, was also white. So, it's not on racial grounds. Why... I strongly suspect the reason they were being harassed at all was because they were at the protest with rifles.
Over there, I was pepper sprayed by somebody that was in the crowd. I don't know why, but I was pepper sprayed.
Did you do anything in retaliation?
I did not.
Now, directing your attention to later in the evening, did there come an occasion where you had contact with Mr. McGinnis?
There was.
And before this evening, August 25th, 2020, did you ever met or spoke to Mr. McGinnis?
I have not.
And you and Mr. McGinnis and Mr. Balch go someplace?
Yes.
And describe that.
Some of those people were out for blood, gun or no gun. This guy was able to defend himself, others could not. Okay. Let's assume some people are out for blood. Whose blood? What distinguished him as a valid target versus somebody else? As has been pointed out again, the person who attacked him was white. It's not his race. What was the reason? I'm asking in all sincerity. I don't know what the reason would be. I think the gun was the attractant.
I get done with my interview with Mr. McGinnis, and I ask him... I asked Mr. McGinnis... No, I don't ask him. I said, if you want to come with us, that's fine, to document and film me and Ryan helping people. And he said, yeah, sure, and he followed behind us.
And in that tape from Mr. McGinnis, there's talk about you being an EMT, correct?
Yes.
Are you an EMT?
I am not.
You have first aid and other training.
I do.
And you go to south on Sheridan Road?
Correct.
You cross 60th and Sheridan Road?
I believe we stay just to the right going south on Sheridan Road.
Okay, and eventually you cross Sheridan Road?
Eventually.
And were the Bearcats there yet?
No. Yes, they were.
Okay. Had they set up a line to stop people that you were aware of?
Not that I was aware of. I just know they were parked right there and people were throwing rocks at them.
Did anybody tell you not to cross that line? You wouldn't be able to go back?
Not until later in the evening.
Okay. You cross that line, where do you go?
We continue straight in a southerly direction down Sheridan Road.
Okay. Were you going any place in particular?
No, we were just going to see if anybody needed medical help, and I looked at a guy's shoulder on the way there.
Okay. And you finish with the guy's shoulder, and you continue on, and what happens?
I continue walking in a southerly direction down Sheridan Road, and then as I'm walking, I believe you guys have been referring to him as Yellow Pants. He said he said something to me. I believe it was, you were the one that pointed your rifle at me with the laser pointed at me. I believe that's what I heard. And I didn't. That's the first time I saw him that night, so I was confused. So I said I did, and then I continued to walk away.
And was the did an admission that you did it, or more of a statement with a question?
It was a sarcastic remark.
Okay. Did you engage with him any further?
No.
And from there, where do you go?
There I continue walking in a southerly direction, merging towards the middle of Sheridan Road.
Okay, at that point, do you become aware of anything?
In about as I'm walking, I start to look because I realize Mr. Balch is not with me anymore.
Okay, did you continue on your way down Sheridan Road without Mr. Balch?
No, I actually went to go look for Mr. Balch in the Ultimate gas station parking lot.
Okay, when you went to the Ultimate gas station parking lot, describe what was going on there.
There were a lot of people there. I don't really know what was going on. I was just focused on trying to find Mr. Balch. As I was looking for him, couldn't find him. I said, okay, no problem. I'll just go back to the car source lot.
Video alarm detected. What?
Let me back up. Were you able to get back to car source number 2?
No, I did not.
Describe that.
As I was trying to get back, the police stopped me. Well, didn't stop me. They told me, I believe they said lines of to not go down there. And I was telling them, hey, I need to go down there. That's where I'm at, that business. I exactly how that conversation went, but they wouldn't let me go back to car source lot number 2.
So you weren't able to car source 2?
I was not.
Did you disobey the police's order?
No.
And you're alone, you're stuck on the other side of the police line from the car source 2. Where do you go?
I go to where there's other people at the gas station protecting the gas station, and I go there because I believe that's the safest place to go because there's other people there. And
at that point, were you able to find Mr. Balch?
I was not.
Well, you're at the Ultimate gas station, I think we've been calling it.
Correct.
Point it out, just there's no.
Right there, the Ultimate Convenience Center, diagonal from.
Okay, so here's my principal issue with this, right? Let me see if I can pull up some images here. Kenosha photos. Okay. When you look at this picture, does your mind scream, this is somebody I go to if I'm injured? This is a person with a big red cross on their shirt, on their hat. They've got a big sign saying, come here. We have bandages, we have gauze, we have first aid stuff, yada, yada, yada. No. No. His hat's on backwards. He's brandishing a gun. The gun isn't just attached to him. It is on its side. He doesn't have his first aid kit, this nondescript little bag on his back, in front where people can see it. This guy isn't looking to give people first aid. I'm sorry. Nobody in their right mind would approach somebody like this with the expectation that they wouldn't be killed. Like, I'm sorry. This is bullshit. He was not just like... He was not just, hey, are you alright? Do you need first aid? Do you need first aid? Oh, don't worry about the gun. This is just a last resort. No, he was like... Look at him. Look at this body language.
The golf gas station.
Okay. And when you were there, what's the next?
What do you mean that's not brandishing? He's holding the gun ready to raise it. He has his finger on the trigger. What would brandishing it look like? Do you need to see fire coming out of the tip? Like what?
Next significant thing that happened.
Dominic Black calls me and he says, Kyle, I need you to get down to the car source lot number 3. The cars are being bashed in. They're setting all the cars on fire. I need you to go and put the fires out.
Okay.
What?
And did you do anything as a result of that phone call?
I did.
What?
To be fair, his barrel is pointed down to the ground, and he's clearly off the that isn't... Guys, like, are you insane? Look, I'm zooming in. Where is his index finger? Look where it is. That's where the trigger is. Like, it's not the responsibility of somebody else in the crowd to go, oh, you know what? Let's think carefully about this, guys. Maybe his finger's not on the trigger. Maybe it's like this. This looks to your average person like he is ready and prepared to use it in that moment. Guys, like... His index... Okay, do I need to, like... Okay, let's just... Apparently people are blind, so let's clarify this, okay? Look. Here we are. Oh, good God. Okay. Let's make this really big. Okay. Now watch this. We're going to zoom in, okay? Where is his finger? Look. Let's draw this out, okay? This is his... Let's make it thick here so you can actually... This is his hand. Oh! Look at that. Okay? That's where the trigger is on a gun. Okay, guys, I don't care what the legal definition of brandishing is. Brandishing a weapon means you make it visible. Like, pretend it's a sword, right? Here, hang on. Let's do this the cool way. Alright, what brandishing is, we're talking philosophically, not legally, what brandishing is going to be dependent upon the nature of the weapon. Right? When somebody brandishes a sword, it is drawn. The analogy here is it is prepared for use, and they are holding it in a stance in which it can be readily deployed to cause bodily harm to somebody they're interacting with. Now, it's not the case with a gun that the bullet needs to be outside of the barrel for it to be brandished, and it's not the case that the gun needs to be aimed directly at somebody for it to be brandished, because we just call that, he's aiming the gun at somebody. This sword is not being brandished. It's in its sheath. It's safe. That gun, however, is being brandished because his finger, if it's not on the trigger, and it looks like it very well could be touching it, his finger is in this much distance. So if he actually decides to, at a moment's notice, he can just go like, and he's ready to go. There's no... It's the time interval that's implied by his stance between his capacity to raise the weapon and fire it, right? Does that make sense? Oh, is the pick blocking me? God damn it. Look, okay. I just ruined that whole explanation, so here. Okay. See, this is not being brandished. This is being shown, right? So when we look at Rittenhouse here, what is the analogy to being brandished? Well, it's dependent upon the nature of the weapon. this is not being brandished, even if I'm holding it right in front of me, because I cannot quickly draw it. This is not a weapon that is prepared for violence. A gun, by contrast, is prepared for violence as soon as his finger can be seen to be in proximity to the trigger. Okay? By contrast, a slower thing like this is brandished when it becomes visibly prepared to do harm to the person who is in close proximity to it. And even, like, in this case, for example, even drawn, like, the time interval between my deploying the weapon and it causing harm is going to be much greater than the time interval between him pulling the trigger and that gun causing harm to whoever he has it pointed at. It's messaging, right? Like, you can have, like, a blade drawn, and, like, sure, it's brandishing technically if you're, like, waving it about at a distance, but really, the significance here is that what he is signaling to people is that he is seconds away from killing someone should he choose to do so. Does that make sense? President Edgy LARPer? I am not an edgy LARPer, but absolutely a LARPer. Like, for God's sake, have you seen my profile picture? I've got a top hat and, like, a grisly-looking ghost face. Oh, I wish that was Napoleonic. This is actually kind of cool. So this was a Christmas gift, and this is... I looked it up. This is just gotten for me because I do fencing, so it was like, oh, this is cool. This is a sword you can technically kind of use, which I never will, of course, so it's just kind of cool. But this is apparently a Mexican cavalry sword, which was also apparently historically very underused because it was just kind of, you know, just given the military technology of the time, it was kind of worthless. But, you know, it's cool. It just feels cool in your hand sometimes. I've scratched my ceiling so many times just from like, oh, this is so cool. I'm such a badass. My lamp. Yeah. Studies have shown that finger placement has almost no effect on time to fire. That's immaterial. That is immaterial because the question here is signaling. To the average person, you having your finger on the trigger tells people you're prepared to fire, right? Does that make sense? What do you mean no video Sunday? What do you... Oh, I see. That's before it was covered. Yeah. Anyways, let's keep going. Yes, and yes, that was just an excuse to, like, show my swords on camera, so...
At the Ultimate gas station, I asked... I don't know who he is, but I asked an individual if he could come with me and if I could have a fire extinguisher to put out the fire.
Hang on a sec, I've been challenged. Well, you changed it, though. You said finger in proximity to trigger. You had said his finger was on the trigger, which it clearly isn't. Finger in proximity to trigger would be sufficient. However, his finger clearly isn't on the trigger. Maybe you're more versed in guns than I am. That's a distinct possibility. I don't particularly care for them. But to my layman's vantage, that looks like a finger on a trigger. And what you need to understand is the layman's vantage is what matters here. So maybe you're right. I'm perfectly willing to concede that, but it's immaterial, because he is signaling to everybody in the crowd that his gun is prepared to fire, and that he is in a stance where he is expecting to use it, and is gearing up to use it. Need sword, of pistol, and handguard. Actually, I thought would be really cool is if you could somehow find a way to make the tip of the sword kind of launch off. And you can't see anything, can you? Because I still have a stupid photo in the way. Let's move that out of the way. Like, just imagine this for a sec. Like, imagine if, like, there was some kind of spring-loaded thing here, so that the top bit just fired off like a projectile, and then was replaced by another point. Yeah, that'd be cool. Get in there. Making me look like a weenie in front of the internet, people.
Were both of those requests satisfied?
One of them were.
What?
I was given a fire extinguisher, but he said he can't come with me, and he said he believes there's already people down there helping protect the business.
Okay. And what did you do then?
I start running towards the car source lot number 3 to put out the fires, pausing occasionally to catch my breath and walk.
Okay. On the way to car source 3, did you have any interaction with Mr. Rosenbaum?
I did not.
Did you speak to Mr. Rosenbaum?
No.
Did you notice Mr. Rosenbaum doing anything as you went down to car source 3?
I didn't notice Mr. Rosenbaum until he came out from behind the car and ambushed me.
Okay, I'll get to that. Did you run the whole way?
No, I didn't.
Okay. You had your gun, correct?
Yes.
And you had a fire extinguisher?
Yes.
And you had your medic?
My medical bag, yes.
And were you asking people about medic at that point?
I was asking people if they needed medical help as I was getting down there.
Did you receive any responses?
No, I didn't.
Describe your approach to car source number 3.
As I'm walking down Sheridan Road, I hear somebody scream.
Excellent point, Fig Name. He is carrying his rifle in a two-handed ready position. If he was helping, why wasn't he carrying his weapon in a sling on his shoulder to keep both hands free? Makes no sense if he was there to help. Exactly. He's not signaling to the people around him that he is there to help people. He is signaling to the people around him that he is ready to fuck you up, frankly.
Burn in hell. And
I can see fear in his eyes. This is the face of someone who is anxious. I mean, of course he's anxious. He's in court, in one of the most televised court cases in human history. Like this is not... We can't read too much into his emotional state here. Anybody would be incredibly stressed out under these circumstances.
I replied with friendly to let them know, hey, I'm just here to help. I don't want any problems. I just want to put out the fires if there are any. I continue walking, and then I noticed the Duramax. I noticed in the back seat of the Duramax, and I stepped towards the Duramax, and as I'm stepping forward, I believe his name is now Joshua Zeminski. He steps towards me with a pistol, and
God damn it, PBS! This was important.
as I'm walking towards to put out the fire, I drop the shirt and I take a step back.
Oh my God!
When you step back from Mr. Zeminski,
I'm gonna have to read the fucking minutes after this.
My plan is to get out of that and go back north down Sheridan Road to where the car source lot number 2 was.
and did you get back? Were you able to go in a northerly direction?
I wasn't.
Describe what happens.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder, and Mr. Rosenbaum was now running from my right side, and I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were people right there.
This is legitimate, by the way. This is 100% legitimate. As somebody who's had like insane panic attacks due to like extreme stressful situations, which I will not recount, that is real. I think he was BSing a lot of the story about how he was. I think his characterization of what he was doing was just, we're just walking around trying to make sure people are okay, and administering first aid. Like, no, fuck that. That was a lie. I'm sure he did carry around a first aid kit. I think that's what we saw on his back. I don't think for a second that was his primary aim to be there, but whatever. This, however, this panic attack we're seeing on stage, that is 100% real. I have not a doubt in my mind that is not an act. If you've ever had like an extreme anxiety attack before, when you're hyperventilating, like you'll throw your head back, you'll like jerk uncontrollably. It's actually weird. It's weird what it does to you, but this is 100% real. I don't see any acting going on here.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
No, it's not about him reliving the trauma. I think that's a mistake. We tend to think of this in movie terms where it's like, oh, he's having flashbacks, he's re-experiencing it. No. No, what's happening is he's under a tremendous amount of stress, and it got to him just now. He's not having flashbacks. Maybe he is, we don't know. But we don't know. What we do know is that this is not what I know, is that this is not an act. I think this is 100% the real thing that we're seeing here. And here's the thing, like, even if everything he was saying was bullshit, even if he had no guilt whatsoever about what happened, even if the event itself didn't traumatize him, he could still easily be triggered into something like this. Just so easily. So easily. A lot of the earlier shit was an act. I 100% will agree with that, but this was real. This was real.
You can just relax for a minute, sir. We're going to take a break.
He was only 18. It's not even a matter of age. This stuff can happen to anybody. I really dislike when people treat this stuff as if, oh, this is only a thing that frail old ladies do. Like, no. Everybody can have this happen to them. And it's not even a matter of weakness. Like, you can be the bravest person alive, but your body will betray you. Like, what you don't understand is that when that's happening to somebody, they don't have control over, like that stuff. That stuff that they're doing, that stuff just assails you. You have zero way to fight back against it. You just have to ride it out. It is amazing what stress does to the human body. Yes, I would like you to order donuts. Thank you very much. But yeah, take this stuff here, take this very seriously. That is real. That is 100% real. And again, even if that event never, like, let's say in an alternate universe, the Kenosha riot never happened. It was all just a big CIA psyop or whatever. And, like, all of the videos, they were just CGI'd. And Kyle Rittenhouse was just, like, he was a good old schoolboy who was picked up. And he was, for whatever reason, just the Matrix wanted to destroy him. Just the stress from the trial alone and from the publicity around it alone could have caused this. So this does not bear at all on his sincerity previously. Making a very modest point here. His anxiety reaction here, that breakdown, that is 100% authentic. That is not an act. I know the difference. That is not an act.
About 10 minutes, and please don't talk about the case during the break. Read, watch, or listen to any comment.
I think what we need to keep in mind here is, like, it's tricky. Like, displays like this, and I think it's a good thing that they do, but they impact your capacity to be objective in the sense that they make you tenderer, shall we say, I hate that word, towards somebody who's done something very, very wrong. But I think it's also important because, like, what is the upshot of him being punished, right? I don't see any good coming out of putting him into a cell for the rest of his life. I don't see any good coming out of him, frankly, being punished at all, ultimately, because and don't get me wrong, like, I am not of the stance that, like, state punishment is inherently a bad thing. I think, in fact, all things being equal, or at least in the absence of something more legitimate, I think it's necessary. And I think sometimes it can be the most just thing possible. But here, like, I don't see what the good is that results from destroying this person. Like, I'm not upset that he's likely going to get off. But at the same time, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel bad for that lady, though. Okay, let's have a brief digression on this, because this is kind of interesting. That's if you take a rehabilitation view of punishment. If you believe in retributive justice, there is an argument to be made. I don't think people should be squeamish about retributive justice. Retributive justice has to do with the dignity of human beings as actors who own their actions, and the dignity of people, especially in the case of murder, who they kill. It's an insult to somebody where a death of a human being is treated as basically just a minor setback to the flourishing of the whole, where your only concern is getting everybody back to tip-top shape as fast as possible. That can't be it. That can't be it. Retributive justice has its place. Retributive justice is the only part of justice that explicitly refers to justice. That being said, it has to be with an aim also to the good in some, like, here's how I think about it, right? It's a farce to treat it as concerned with human dignity and the dignity of the murdered if you're just sort of going by rote and just punishing people capitally as a matter of procedure, where you in fact don't actually care about the victims. This is just the thing we do to violent criminals. No. I think the appropriate time for capital punishment or whatever is when you are dealing with a person who, to your judgment, and this all comes down to judgment in the end, to the judgment of the appropriate bodies, cannot be saved. And by saved, I don't mean in the sense of put to work in a factory somewhere and just we can hope and pray they'll never kill somebody again or whatever. I mean, they cannot be saved, and they cannot be made to be truly remorseful for what they've done, and to become the kind of human being who isn't a stain on the existence of our species. In the event of that, where somebody in that community can find some reason to actually care about the victim. In the event of, and it's tricky, but like, in order to get to a point where you can justifiably kill someone for committing murder, say, I think it's important that there be people existing in that context who are actively pained on behalf of the murdered by the murderer continuing to exist in an unrepentant state. Does that make sense? That's sort of where I'm at. That's, by the way, just to be perfectly clear, that's not a proposal for legislation. This is just a description of my emotional response to the thing, like what seems right. Like, for example, I think it's far from even just being not the right thing to do. I think it's morally wrong in the event of a rapist murderer, say, who is laughing about his crimes, to be allowed to persist in prison if he finds it satisfying, or if he finds himself at least still able to continue to laugh. Or we can even be more particular, unwilling to express remorse. I think it is actually a moral wrong to insist, for dogmatic reasons, to make that person persist to exist. Make that person's existence persist, while the family of the victims the families of the victims are still suffering as a result of that. I think that is wrong on multiple levels. I think it's destructive to social harmony. I think it's destructive to morale. I think it's emotionally pernicious to the families of the victims, and I think it dishonors the victims themselves by permitting this person on the bare grounds of, again, like a dogmatic stance towards certain procedures at the end of the day, because those procedures did not save the victim's life. On the dogmatic insistence of certain procedures, to allow their families, in addition to them, to continue to be harmed, for the sake of what? Like, it becomes insane. Does that make sense? It probably doesn't. I'm speaking very off the cuff here, but in practice, I'm not even sure if I'm even for the death penalty at all. But like, when I think about how things ought to be in my head, that's sort of where I go. Okay, I think we've seen... What happens if we jump ahead? Oh god, this still keeps going. I think we've seen enough. I haven't seen anything that really changes my mind anyways. Granted, we're still early. Oh, thank you. Oh, don't throw out the blue mug. That's still clean. I'll still use it later. Thank you. I think we've got the idea. They're being harmed by him existing. Yeah, potentially. Look, if you live with the knowledge that the person who killed someone you love is laughing about it somewhere else, that's going to affect you. That's just a fact. Like, that's not even... I don't think that's even disputable. And it's going to affect you in a very pernicious way. You are not going to live peacefully after that, while that's going on. Maybe never, but it's going to be a lot worse. That's a bit like saying gay marriage harms my marriage. Whether people do or do not do does not affect me. Well, maybe it should affect you, Nicholas. Maybe that's a moral failing on your part. Alright, we're going to stop with this segment because, again, it's 4 hours long. I don't want to go through the whole thing. I think we get the idea. Death penalty should require the highest degree of certainty and zero chance of rehab for crimes that are most severe. Yeah, I agree with that. Again, insofar as we want to even accept the death penalty. Look, I'm okay with the death penalty not even being a thing. I'm not wedded to the idea that we need to kill certain people. But we need to be very honest about what we're doing. We are dogmatically insisting that we are allowing certain extreme forms of evil to persist on principle. And that's fine. Like, that at least shows respect. You're acknowledging the cost. I have no problem with that. If it's a moral failing, I've been accused of far worse. But that's only because of your moral failing. You don't know what the worst thing is you've been accused of. Alright, let's take a short break, and we'll come back in a moment. Put on some music. What have we got here? I like this one. Skip ahead a little bit. There we go. Oh, and let's reset the audio. Yes, because it's at 1,000 times right now. It's at 1,400 times. Okay, let's go back to... Let's go to 500. Alright, I'll be right back, guys. Here, before I go, let's focus on what we'll be covering. And let's get to the, oh yeah, that's where we'll wait. There we are. All right. I am back. Alas. I was free briefly. I was happy. Away from this nightmare. Trying to tie utilitarianism to either ethical subjectivism or objectivism seems weird to me, since utilitarianism is a normative ethical theory and subjectivism/objectivism are meta-ethical theories. Yeah, that's true. But I think in this case we're speaking very vulgarly, right? We're talking about whether or not moral duties are universally applicable to subjects, which are of course flattened into a single kind of thing. Which is, we can talk about that. I think a lot of perspective philosophy's language use in this area comes from his interaction with people like Cosmic Skeptic and stuff like that. So I don't think he's particularly engaged with a whole lot of like really hard ethical theory. I think he dips his toe in Peter Singer stuff, his atrocious abuse of Hegel, frankly. For the sake of repurposing it towards, again, his brand of being like the philosophical vegan. But I generally don't think much of it. Anyways, so what have we here? Let's get serious for a sec. Pull yourself together, Lewis. This was at the tail end of a very long stream. This is on my channel, to be clear. This video. This is a series of 2 clips that I took from the end on Twitch, because he published the actual stream without this ending sequence, which I think was wise. But I made some comments. I can't entirely recall the context. I could probably go back to the Twitch and see them again, but this intro part deserves some explanation, but we'll get to that. So what is this? Lewis, Perspective Philosophy here, made a fairly long stream on Vosh being incoherent or something, or doesn't understand utilitarianism, which, probably. He's not exactly a philosophical wunderkind. But at the end of it, I made some comments about some remarks that he makes that I thought were preposterous and demonstrated a degree of ignorance that was astonishing even to me, and I don't hold this guy in very high regard. And I have to say, they made me smile a little bit. This was a little bit unreal to see. I don't get a lot of people responding to me very often, so it's a treat when someone goes as off the wall as he does here. But we'll go through it. Can we review this stream tomorrow? Oh, you mean his whole stream on Vosh? Yeah, maybe. However, tomorrow we're doing the stream on Squid Game, so we might be a bit packed already. But yeah, at some point I have no problem with going over that. That'd be interesting. But yeah. Let's just dive right in, shall we? Let me know how the audio is again. In fact, let me just turn it up quickly, so I'd rather it be too loud and just have to quiet myself. Well, it's at 500%. This should be audible, so we'll see. Here, we need to make myself as pretty as possible. We're going to war. Here we go.
Ultimately damages the movement. And yeah, like I think that's it. And hopefully if you want to go, this was like a how it's made video. The company won't reveal how they do this part, and that's why. How is that a how it's made video, President Sunday? Why are you even here?
Okay, so this actually bears some explanation. So what you don't see is prior to this clip, Lewis had extensive audio difficulties where, for whatever reason, his audio would start echoing and repeating, and at one point he went totally mute for like 10 minutes or so. And so I joked here, it's like, this is like a how it's made video. Like, there's one on mini wheats, or like some off-brand of mini wheats. And they'll show all the steps, like we collected the grain, and then these raw materials go into a machine. The company won't reveal how they do this part. And then at the end it's like, and this is how it's made. And that was the joke, because the steps he's taking to get to where he's at, from the vantage of somebody who had just come into the stream at that point, was that. And that's why Vosh doesn't understand utilitarianism. So that was a joke. That wasn't even against Lewis.
Look, mate, look, if you want to say utilitarianism is always subjective, then I would probably agree with you in the sense that I would say Kantians are subjective. But if you want to say that utilitarians believe they are subjective, I would say that you're absolutely mistaken, since John Stuart Mill, since Jeremy Bentham thought himself to be an egoist, John Stuart Mill certainly isn't a subjectivist. Henry Sedgwick, I'm pretty sure, isn't even a subjectivist.
I don't think Henry Sedgwick is an objectivist. Again, like, utilitarianism is a normative theory. It has to do with it has to do with what we consider, it has to do with norms, right? It doesn't necessarily reference specifically or with confidence, like what the relationship between human ethics and like the cosmos or something is. You can hold it in suspension as a purely political thing. But while we're on that note, this is a little bit strange, because John Stuart Mill is like the most, other than Jeremy Bentham, of course, the most well-known utilitarian. Let me just read for you from John Stuart Mill's third chapter on utilitarianism, which is entirely concerned with justifying against other ethical theories which he characterizes as suffering from precisely the same subjective vulnerabilities that utilitarianism does. Like, let me just read for you. So this is from chapter 3 from Utilitarianism, which is titled "Of the Ultimate Sanction of the Principle of Utility," and I quote: "The ultimate sanction, therefore, of all morality, external motives apart, being a subjective feeling in our own minds, I see nothing embarrassing to those whose standard is utility in the question. I see nothing embarrassing to those whose standard is utility in the question, what is the sanction of that particular standard? We may answer, the same as of all other moral standards, the conscientious feelings of mankind. Undoubtedly, this sanction has no binding efficacy on those who do not possess the feelings it appeals to, but neither will these persons be more obedient to any other moral principle than to the utilitarian one. On them, morality of any kind has no hold but through the external sanctions." So, going back a little bit, John Stuart Mill distinguishes between external and internal sanctions. Sorry, I'm repeating myself sometimes because I'm skipping over my words because I'm tired. External sanctions are things like, well, he gives examples. The hope of favor and the fear of displeasure from our fellow creatures or from the ruler of the universe, along with whatever we may have of sympathy or affection for them, or of love and awe of him, inclining us to do his will independently of selfish consequences. That's an external one. An internal sanction would be an inner feeling of duty. A pain more or less intense attendant on violation of duty, which in properly cultivated moral natures rises in the more serious cases into shrinking from it as an impossibility. So the idea of a kind of a feeling of aversion to moral wrongs, and a feeling of obligation to moral oughts, things like that. And it's more closely related to the act itself, as opposed to, again, for something extrinsic to it. So a sense of duty, or a sense of love for God or for one's fellow man, or something like that. But continuing with the quote I was doing before. On them, morality of any kind has no hold but through the external sanctions. Meanwhile, the feelings exist, a fact in human nature, the reality of which, and the great power with which they are capable of acting on those in whom they have been duly cultivated, are proved by experience. No reason has ever been shown why they may not be cultivated, to as great intensity in connection with the utilitarian as with any other rule of morals. Here's the upshot of this, okay? John Stuart Mill is arguing here precisely that utilitarianism is not vulnerable for being subjective. But if we want to go like meta-ethical here, I don't know if this, yeah, meta-ethical here. It's subjective again insofar as it is applicable to specific subjects in the universe. It's not truly universal. If you erased all conscious life from reality, from the cosmos or the universe or whatever, there would be no utility. This is the point Kant is making when he's saying the only purely good thing is a good will. Why? Because if we specify it any further to any particular, or involving any particular set of psychological qualities, we end up mixing in other things, other kinds of causalities. So we don't actually know if what we're dealing with is really the good, or something else entirely, some other pleasure or something. Does that make sense? Does Lewis think egoism isn't subjective, like one's ego internally and externally can definitely be perceived subjectively? Lewis doesn't understand Kant is this principal issue here, because Kant makes this distinction very clear. The question is not of the existence of of duties incumbent on all human beings. The question of universality has to do with whether these things are whether they're universal, whether they are in fact fixed to things that have only a transient and limited existence, or whether they are in fact truly universal duties. Like, to will the good is something that you can say, well, depending on what the good is, depending on what will is, that's not humanly particular, right? Maybe it is. Like, I think there's a strong argument for it being so. But he's just wrong here. And I'm willing to attribute this again to just a slip-up, but as far as I'm aware, none of the people he's mentioned make a positive statement for utilitarianism being universal, which is what I take him to mean by objective, because of course it's subjective. Even Kantian morals are subjective in the sense that beyond, again, the categorical beyond, again, like that simple maxim, will the good, anything more particular than that is going to be practically wrapped up in the human. And so it's not going to be universal because the human isn't universal. President Sunday, I don't think being a utilitarian predicts your meta-ethical view. You can be a realist or anti-realist and self-identify as a utilitarian. I agree, and that's the point I was sort of making here. I can't recall exactly. I'll have to go over the stream again. I can't recall exactly what he was saying that I characterize as consequentialist. But utilitarianism is definitionally always subjective, because, again, the principle of utility, however you construe it, is always going to make direct reference to something particular in the world. It is utility to something, the utility of something, whether you regard that as pleasure or whatever. Am I making sense? We'll keep going.
And Peter Singer is an objectivist. So I'm like, I don't know.
I don't think Peter Singer is an objectivist. And I think he's been making a move recently towards valorizing. Like, by the way, by objectivist here, this is really non-standard terminology. By objectivist, I take him to mean sort of in the William Lane Craig sense. The existence of objective moral values and duties, i.e. moral values and duties that transcend culture, or something like that. I don't take Peter Singer to be making a positive statement philosophically towards that end. He has expressed that he perceives an advantage. This is my read on him: an advantage in objective morals, so to speak, in that other sense, with respect to things like climate change and whatnot. Because these again become like transcultural issues, yada yada yada. and you get it. Even if he did, frankly, I don't hold Peter Singer in very high regard at all. If you've ever read a book by Peter Singer, his logic is extremely weak. He is very prone to making exceedingly irresponsible statements, falsely describing major philosophical theories. His books on Marx and Hegel are a scandal. Well, they're a scandal. They're just really, really, really bad. And he's just not good. I don't like Peter Singer. I think he's more an entrepreneur than a philosopher at bottom. And like maybe he gives away a lot of his money, but there are other rewards than cash. I think he gets rewarded by the sense that he's some kind of great moral sage or whatever. More to the point, and this actually brings us back to this conversation here. I think Peter Singer is actually quite pernicious. In the sense that he redirects all of our energies away from actually solving systemic issues, which are far more damaging to human beings than more transient short-term issues, like effective altruism is concerned with getting results. Effectively, it's effective. And I think that giving people the idea that the best good you can do is to play in the capitalist game, get wealthy, and then donate a bunch to charity, makes us complacent and stands itself as an apology or at the very least a structural defense for the unjust systems that prevail now. A Peter Singer stan is not a good socialist, I'll say that. What am I looking at here? Well, Dr. Parfit was a utilitarian, but he was not a subjectivist. In fact, he was vehemently against subjectivism, I take you to mean. I don't think you should understand necessarily utilitarianism as subjective. It's definitionally subjective, though. Like, I take your point. Like, maybe he does. I don't care if these people understand themselves as subjectivists. Utilitarianism, and this, by the way, isn't a weakness of it. As I just pointed out, by the way, great compilation. I have no idea how much it is. I got it for free. But Hackett has a compilation of classics of Western philosophy. It's got a lot of cool stuff in there. John Stuart Mill in Utilitarianism makes actually a pretty strong defense of utility, despite the fact that it is subjective. Like, it's okay for an ethical system to be strictly predicable of the human, or appropriate to the human, rather. That's the wrong word for that. That's not a downside to it. Maybe that's what we have to settle with, at least politically. I feel like we have to get straight what we mean by objective here. You can definitely be a realist utilitarian, so in that case Sunday is wrong, but I don't think a utilitarian is necessarily a non-realist, right? The point is that insofar as we're talking specifically about the utilitarian aspect of it, that is going to be subjective. Always. It's baked into the concept. Utility is not objective. Utility is judged. It is judged by a particular kind of judger. It is utility for something, for a particular kind of life form, for a particular life form of that kind of particular kind of life form. That was muddled. Like, you're right, you can absolutely be a realist utilitarian, but the utilitarian aspect of it, that's not unreal, but that's, again, going to be, it's going to be subjective. It's going to be apropos of a subject. Even if the subject is all of humanity, by the way. Like, in practical terms, it could be binding for human beings. But that it's still subjective. This is again where Lewis's non-standard terminology is a bit of a problem here, because like he's using these terms like a Christian apologist might use them. Like, without God, there's no objective values and duties. Like, there are, even with God, there are no objective values and duties. Even divine command theory, it makes God the primary subject, right? Like, they're determined arbitrarily by a subjectivity. These things aren't simply furnishing the world. They are determined by a subject, and apropos only of specific subjects. Why am I hearing Discord? I'm gonna turn that off. Oh, I see what's. It's Hawes's. Hawes invited me to a debate show called the Infrared Showdown, and I'll never forgive him for stealing my branding. But whatever. Anyways, let's keep going in this.
Why you would say such a stupid thing?
Well, I've just explained why I would say such a stupid thing, but we'll
So
let him continue.
anyway, I mean, I will say, like, I do think they're subjectivists in the sense that they're wrong and that their position's ethically ungrounded, but they don't believe that. Anyway.
Who cares what they believe? This is immaterial.
Oh, anyway.
Even if they did believe that, and I don't know who he's talking about here because John Stuart Mill was not an objectivist, as he's saying. But whatever.
So yeah, I do hope that in the video has explained, let's say, why Vosh doesn't understand utilitarianism, and I will be going into it in more detail, and I will be making a full video on it. And if you want to obviously see that, then you're gonna have to subscribe. So please subscribe, and we can really get into this. Actually, this audio is not cutting out, so I'll probably spend another 10 minutes answering questions from the chat, and yeah, if you got a question, just fire away. Donations get priority, and then I'll bounce. Sorry for the issues, guys. I really am sorry for the technical issues. Is there a point of Vosh arguing over ethics when he already said that moral statements don't yield truth value? No, I don't think there is. I think that's ridiculous. I think that he's like, I don't know why necessarily a subjectivist would be arguing for what is a generalist approach to ethics. That should be arguing for universal principles of right and wrong.
Well, he's not arguing for universal principles of right and wrong. He's arguing in the context of somebody else who speaks his language, who's in the same sphere, in the same context. Like we can argue that in a context there are, impetuses to obey certain things that we elevate with the label of morality. He's not necessarily making a metaphysical statement, though, as again, like John Stuart Mill doesn't. So.
Because they would see it as grounded in their attitudes and their belief states.
That's not a contradiction, though. It's like, of course, they're grounded practically in our attitudes and our belief states, and it's not an argument against. It's frankly not even an argument against the ethicality of a decision or whatever. That it's predicated upon our belief states and that stuff, right? Like, you can have a subjective ethic. That's not absurd. If anything, like the idea of ethics that we frankly inherit from political philosophy, because originally it referred to the character ethos of a polis and the kinds of subjects, or the kinds of citizens rather, that it produces, which is why you don't really find a theory of action, not like a theory of action, but like a moral theory of what you should and shouldn't do in Aristotle, but rather in his ethics you find a theory of the things you should be and how to produce those things in citizens. And that's, of course, always going to be totally subjective, because it's, again, we're talking about a specific political community as the biome, if you will, out of which a certain kind of human being is produced. Ethics has always historically been predicable of a particular. It's the ethics or the ethos of, right? The ethos of Athens, the ethos of Sparta, the ethos or lack thereof of Google. I think that by not subjective he means that the truth of a moral proposition is obtained not due to the subject's feelings or desires. Sure, but I mean, there's more to a human apatheia than, that's the name of the person I'm responding to. There's more to a subject than simply their feelings and desires, right? It's not sufficient to simply say that a moral proposition is not derived from feelings or desires. A moral proposition may simply concern something that is only true of a particular subjectivity. It's not universal. So if that subjectivity is gone, then you no longer, that moral proposition no longer obtains. That would make it predicable of a subject. That's not universal. Now, if he's talking about objective moral values and duties again in that apologetic sense, it's meaningless. Like, it's actually meaningless.
Other than, let's say, universal principles, and then those belief states are usually grounded in like a Humean notion of motivation, so they're related to their passions. So everything ultimately boils down to an emotive state for subjectivists.
No, that's wrong. That's wrong, because again, a subjective moral system still requires you to do things that you don't want to do. It still condemns, right? Nobody serious boils down subjective ethics to whatever people feel about a thing. Rather, the subjectivity in question is typically like a community network that results in certain kinds of norms being crystallized. And it's in terms of those that moral propositions are sustained. Does that make sense?
Arguing whether someone is right or wrong, since there is, it's basically just boo hurrah most of the time, whether it's emotivism, prescriptivism, or I would even argue like forms of cognitivism, even quasi-realism and normal expressivism, I think bottom out in that. So I don't know why they would do that. Your voice is really soothing, PP. Well, you clearly weren't here for the mic issues. I've already unbanned you from the Discord, Matiashu. So yeah, I don't see the point in Vosh arguing over ethics. Vosh copy and pasted his ethics from Destiny, and Destiny barely understands ethics, so GG. Kind of. I think Destiny does understand ethics. I think just Destiny is... I think Destiny's... Destiny his special pleads in relation to like moral knowledge and why it's subjective. Like he said, like he's a moral anti-realist, not because of him having an argument, I'd say, why it's subjective, but rather I think that it's just not intuitive for him, and he doesn't necessarily understand the arguments for objectivism. And I think often he sort of special pleads towards this idea that he's not an epistemic anti-realist, but instead just doesn't believe that there are moral facts. Now that's, I mean, like, I disagree, but that's fair enough in one respect. But Vosh goes so far as to reject truth itself. And in many ways, I think that the position that he's actually advocating for from an existentialist position is not terrible or anything, but I think that he doesn't see the overall consequences of what he's arguing for, and then he ends up arguing things from a utilitarian standpoint, and which I don't think is compatible, and then, even from a socialist standpoint, which I don't think is compatible.
Bookmark that. That's going to come important. That's going to be important fairly shortly.
I think Destiny understands how his theory interconnects, and I think that his conclusions, this is the best way I think to put Destiny versus Vosh. Destiny has better working out. Vosh has better conclusions, usually. Like, I agree with Vosh on market socialism. I agree with Vosh on a few political points, more than I do with Destiny. But it's not because Vosh has understood why we're arguing for those positions, but rather that Vosh is morally lucky.
Which sort of begs the question. Why are you undermining Vosh to the favor of Destiny ultimately? Because, as you say, they have different ends, right? Contrary ends. Why are you doing so just to be a snob? See, I don't think Lewis understands ethics either. I'm just a political scientist. I'm not even in philosophy, yet I somehow managed to not be a total train wreck about this. But like, let's take him at his word here. Okay, that's the case. Okay, fine, fair enough. So, for the sake of being a stickler about method, despite the fact that again Vosh is not a philosopher and has never posited himself as a philosopher, why are you why are you why are you working ultimately just to elevate the worst conclusion over the better one, just to get one on Fat Ian? It's a little... That doesn't make any sense, does it? Like, that strikes me under your own framework as being pernicious. Like, if Vosh is right accidentally, just thank your lucky stars and move on. What the hell is this?
President Sunday, do you think that utilitarians think that they are subjectivists? So when Peter Singer says that he's an objectivist, do you think that he's just lying?
Hey chat, can anybody find me a quote by Peter Singer saying he is an objectivist? Send it to me on Discord if you can find one. There's a link in the stream description.
What about John Stuart Mill? Do you think Mill thought he was a subjectivist?
Yes, I just quoted him for you, you big doofus.
Do you think that Jeremy Bentham thought he was a subjectivist?
I haven't read Bentham, I couldn't tell you, but I'm gonna bet no. Wait. Yes, I'm gonna bet yes. I think he thought he was a subjectivist. And even if he didn't think he was a subjectivist, I didn't actually make any comment here to the effect that I thought that utilitarians thought they were subjectivists. I commented that utilitarianism is always going to be subjective, because again, utility is always going to be apropos of a particular subject, definitionally. Our perspective philosophy stream's always this boring. No, I actually quite like the ASMR quality of them. Just learn to appreciate the finer things. Wednesday, the truly inferior day of the week. I'm just kidding, I love you.
Or do you think that they all try to ground? Like, I think Bentham tried to use Hobbes. Mill.
Oh, for fuck's sake. He tried to use Hobbes. Okay, do you know what using Hobbes means? Hobbes literally is... Hobbes is the inventor of liberalism, not because he was himself a liberal, but he cites political legitimacy in the interiority of individual subjects. Hobbes is a subjectivist. Oh my god. Oh, I'm way too drunk for this.
Mill argued that that all beings desire happiness, and that happiness is inherently valuable.
All beings. The subjectivity in this case is a kind of thing in the world, a being. Because he's not talking about, like, all being. He's not talking about, like, the... whatever substance forms this weird blue mug thing. Like, he's talking specifically about organisms. A kind of thing that exists in a tiny, tiny amount of space during a tiny, tiny amount of time. I think then you're talking past each other, because by objective, I don't think he means not related to subjects. I think his objective is compatible with your Okay, well, why... This isn't my subjective and objective. This is like standard... Oh my god. Look, like... We'll get to why I'm not being charitable in the first place, but why is it incumbent on me to make up an argument for him? We're not even talking about being charitable anymore. And no, Pippa, obviously, the mug is made of fire. Let's keep going.
So, I don't know where you get the idea that utilitarians think that it's subjective when they would think that it's objective.
Well, in answer to your question, I think utilitarians I get the idea that utilitarians think it's subjective because they tell me it's fucking subjective. But I also never commented on whether or not they thought it was subjective because it's immaterial. Their psychological state concerned with their moral philosophy puts absolutely no restrictions on how I can describe them.
Like, I think you've just got to be kind of an idiot to think that.
I am kind of an idiot. It's got me there.
I mean, I would argue that they are subjectivists in the same way I'd say that anything ungrounded is subjective. Like they are just wrong. Like,
Well, no, because something ungrounded, like the idea, say, that moral rightness is just a part of the fabric of all being. See, that's universal. That's universal. But that could be a totally ungrounded statement, right? Now, if he means, like, you see how mixed up this is. Now, clearly what he means by ungrounded is, like, you know, your moral opinions don't have an anchor in something more stable than your sense perception or your history or whatever. Like, fine, okay, or your culture. Transient things, right? That you can't really trust 100%. You don't have a God's eye view of the world. That's what he means. But he's mixing things up a little bit because like, here, let me rewind this. I need to clarify my thinking on this quickly.
where you get the idea that utilitarians think that it's subjective when they would think that it's objective. Like, I think you've just got to be kind of an idiot to think that. I mean, I would argue that they are subjectivists in the same way I'd say that anything ungrounded is subjective. Like they are just wrong. Like,
okay, so your moral opinions being subjective doesn't mean that they're wrong, right? Now, if he means they're... I don't even know what he's trying to say here. This is just dumb. Like, subjectivist doesn't mean it's ungrounded. When you're saying an ethicality or a morality is subjective, what you are literally saying is it is grounded in the subject. Like, that is the basis of it. It is either specifically apropos only of a subject, or it is emanating from a subject, which is really modification on the same thing. Reading Kant isn't hard. This doofus pretends to have read Hegel in some depth, and I do believe that he has, albeit very badly. But when you read Hegel, when you've read Hegel seriously, reading Kant is like a knife through butter. It is so easy. It is so easy. Kant's actually a wickedly good writer, by the way. Highly recommend. And Hegel misunderstood him a little bit, so... Oop, I believe my pie is here. Huzzah.
it's being, like, individualistic reason leads to subjective conclusions, but then that's a Hegelian take. So I don't...
Hang on a sec, what's a Hegelian take?
say that anything ungrounded is subjective. Like they are just wrong. Like, it's being, like, individualistic reason leads to subjective conclusions, but then that's a Hegelian take.
That's not a Hegelian take. Individual reason leads to subjective conclusions. That's... where the hell is that in Hegel? Where is that in Hegel? Individual reasoning leads to subject... First of all, that definitely doesn't originate in Hegel. But where is that in Hegel? That's a Hegelian take. Or which Hegelian is he talking... Like, what is he talking about? And why would individual reason lead to a subjective conclusion? There's no contradiction in individual reason leading to an objective conclusion on his usage of that word.
So I don't know why you would say that, like, it has anything to do with... Like, I just don't understand why you would even make that point.
I know you don't understand
How is
that.
utility always subjective? Like, unless you're making the point that it's ethically subjective because it lacks grounding, which would be like a Hegelian point, then fair enough.
No, that's not a Hegelian point. That is not a Hegelian point. You're hearing the microwave. My pie is being heated up. It is an apple pie from White Spot, by the way. Do not get the blueberry pie. The blueberry pie is not the same as the apple pie. The apple pie has a nice homemade buttery flaky crust. It's delicious. The blueberry pie is blueberries in a cookie bowl. And I don't think I have ever experienced any greater emotional anguish than when I tried to break that with my fork and I learned that it was basically a giant arrowroot cookie. The blueberry pie is a blueberry lie. Don't get it.
But then, like, last time I saw one of your streams, you made a really terrible point about Kant. So, like, I think you tried to criticize me, then made a point about Kant, which was an absolute misinterpretation of Kant. So...
So you're just going to leave it there? You're not going to tell me what the terrible point was? What was the what did I get wrong about Kant? Like, look, my video response, my stream response, this is before I face revealed, to his awful, incoherent video on objective morality. Which isn't even just wrong, it's incoherent. Like, it actually doesn't make any sense. My response to that has been out for months. Months and months and months. Not a word. Not a single response. Not in text, not in video, nowhere. He has been able to say nothing. Nothing. Like, I get no responses from anybody. I would love for somebody to actually give me, like... I would love for him to break it down and, like, say, here's why you're wrong. I would love that. Nothing. What did I say about Kant that was a bad point? Like, you've remembered it. It's in your head. You recall it. You have it to hand. What is it? And this is sort of like endemic to his how he presents himself, how he argues philosophically generally. It's just a whole bunch of black boxes. And like, even watches debates with people like Ask Yourself, like, incoherent. I think the reason why he insists on doing streams is because he's very good at just sort of maintaining the flow of conversation, even if he can't make a coherent point to save his life. Like, he can't. Like, if you ever watch him, watch his debate with Hawes. Hawes actually surprised me there. Now, Hawes is a clown in a lot of ways. I like him nonetheless, but he's a clown. And he was going apeshit throughout that whole debate. But when you listen to Hawes' arguments, even when he's pulling stuff out of his ass, there's some kind of logical consistency to it. I couldn't understand anything that Lewis was saying. It was weird. It was like an acid trip. He sounds good while he's saying it. Could I break down or recall even a single argument he made? No. Except for this. And I'm pulling this from memory, so I'm not going to get the wording right, but roughly, he bastardizes Hegel, who, in very rough terms, this is not accurate, but an ethical sphere is ultimately derived again from a relationship between conscious beings who are conscious of each other as like themselves. They see themselves in the other, yada, 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 all that stuff. An ethical sphere is derived from that. Ethical obligations are derived from that. He tries to say that, well, life forms with no capacity to communicate with us operate in the same way. It's like no, you can't use Hegel for that. Now, maybe there's an argument to be made to accomplish that, but he doesn't make it. Like, he's just... Like spirit science has a better logical continuity most of the time. Ask Yourself is a clown. Ask Yourself is a clown. I don't even like Ask Yourself. But I could understand what he was saying. Like, Ask Yourself is awful. I do not like him at all. There's no love lost for Ask Yourself. But in his interactions with him, I felt so much sympathy for when Ask Yourself was like, I don't understand what you said, because neither could I. And it's not because what he's saying is just so brilliant or high level. It's actually incoherent. He just waffles. Thank you. Oh. I see you microwave the ice cream as well. Oh, that is so good. Okay. Let's keep going.
I never said utilitarianism wasn't compatible with socialism. I said that it wasn't compatible with subjectivism, and specifically Vorsch's non-cognitive, existentialist non-cognitive subjectivism, really.
Let's hear that again.
I never said utilitarianism wasn't compatible with socialism. I said it wasn't compatible with subjectivism.
All right. I asked you to bookmark this. Here's the reason why.
So far as to reject truth itself. And in many ways, I think that the position that he's actually advocating for from an existentialist position is not terrible or anything, but I think that he doesn't see the overall consequences of what he's arguing for, and then he ends up arguing things from a utilitarian standpoint, and which I don't think is compatible, and then, even from a socialist standpoint, which I don't think is compatible.
Oops, Lewis. You made a boo-boo there. He forgot what he said. Which, I mean, when you make no sense whatsoever, you can be forgiven for that. Here, where'd we leave off here? Yeah, we're...
Existentialist non-cognitive subjectivism, really.
I think that's where we left off.
I agree almost, engineer. Socialism is when you put a rose in your Bible. It's exactly the same. It's lip service to the notion of socialism, right? Rather than actually behaving as socialists ought. Because socialists should understand that there are principles from which we need to engage in. There are moral qualms within the status quo which need to be undone, which require action on part of the actors within society. Which is why we would say that socialists argue for higher moral standards or higher ethical standards.
No, they don't. Socialists argue not again, I haven't said this before, but socialists argue for the interests of the most universal class, right? Moral systems, especially like bougie moral scolding like this, has zero revolutionary capacity. In fact, it arrests you because it constrains your action to... It gives you the impression that moral action, quote-unquote, is constrained to certain modes of behaving within a system. So it's explicitly not challenging that system. This is, again, one of the issues with Peter Singer. Like the Wall Street exec who donates 40% of his income. It's like, yay, great, but he hasn't addressed any systemic problems.
I've just reached the point, like President Sunday. I'm just gonna ban you. You're a dick. I think that you're kind of a weasel who misrepresents people, and I don't really think you're a decent guy. I tried to give you publicity, and I arranged the debate with you. So you know what I hate about you, President Sunday? I genuinely
don't say it.
I try to give you the opportunity when you with the whole infrared thing, you come to us, you say, can I moderate the infrared debate? I had no reason to let you mod, right? You'd already criticized me videos and stuff.
I criticized me videos. He's so triggered he's turning into a pirate. Right. Well, let me tell you how it be, laddie. So what actually happened was he and Infrared were going to have debate, or Infrared was raring for a debate, and I said, hey, I'm doing a debate show on my channel. I'll be an impartial moderator. You want to do it? He said, cool. That's it. I was not pining for perspective philosophy clout. I wanted to have two people debate Hegel on my show. That's it. And if he was being so generous, he probably wouldn't have streamed the debate on his own channel at the same time as I was streaming, so I would actually get views from it. But in terms of misrepresenting people, I cannot help but notice that none of these assertions have actually been backed up by anything. I misrepresent people. Demonstrate. Demonstrate. Do you mean I misrepresent Doomer politics in his smear video on Vosh? That was full to the brim with lies. Even, by the way, if Vosh can be it's the wrong word. Vosh can be criticized for myriad things extremely harshly, which I have done. I have a backlog of videos doing so. Do I mean you? For having zero standards and prostituting out philosophy for the sake of building your brand at the expense of the respectability of veganism and of philosophy? For sharing that video, doing exactly the same thing, giving the impression that the philosophical stance to so many people is, again, to just prostitute all your standards out as soon as it becomes transiently useful to do so, as soon as it allows you to hurt somebody you dislike? You don't have any standards. By the way, getting this guy to agree to a time was like pulling teeth. Hawes expressed that due to his sleeping schedule, it would be extremely painful for him to do so before a certain time. Which is something that he's been consistent on for as far as I've seen him on stream, so I think that was actually true. And it came out afterwards that, no, you know what, I was actually fine with a broader time range as soon as it was agreed upon. His takes on socialism being moral is more utopian than Marxist. Yeah, I agree with that. No, this guy doesn't have any kindness in him. This was no act of generosity. He was probably indifferent. He was probably prepared just to go in for a violent bloodbath. Because, like, this guy doesn't seek out respectable people to grow. He seeks out debates with people like Darth Dawkins. And Vosh and Destiny. His entire career, as far as I can ascertain, and I can ascertain it quite far because of course this whole backlog of videos is on YouTube to be seen, has been chasing engagements not with intelligent interlocutors, not with good interlocutors, but with interlocutors who could grow his audience. Which, you know, is part of the game. It's what you have to do to expand. But that's all he's done. It's all he's done. That and vegan advocacy. Which, you know, fine. Except you do it so badly, and so vainly and so condescendingly that it can only hurt the cause. Which means all you're doing is aggrandizing yourself at the expense of veganism, at the expense of philosophy.
But I was like, you know what? I bet he could be an impartial mod here.
I could be.
It's
I'm a very good
idea.
mod, actually.
And I see it as a channel which wasn't as big as mine, or even just a little bit smaller. And so I was like, you know what?
Substantially smaller. I'm at 3.5k now. After a massive jump recently, he was already at like 12k.
But I'll do what I think is nice, and you know, help collaborate with this kid. You know, like help get him some viewers. And then at the first chance you get,
Bless his black little heart. He thinks he's older than me.
you know, like in trying to get, you know, that sweet clout from Vosh by, you know, shitting on Duma politics, you then shit on me in the process when all I did was share the video. You accused me of helping produce it and you know, of not understanding why, you know, this is absolutely wrong, when it was clear to everyone who watched it that you were basically sucking Vosh's dick. So, like,
this guy's been riding the fact that he had a debate with Vosh for years. Well, has it been years? How long has this actually been? Let me actually take a look at this. It feels like years. It's probably been a few months. Philosophy versus Vosh. Oh, only 9 months ago, huh? Well, it's almost a year. See, here's the thing. Midway through my video takedowns of Doomer Politics, I stopped. I stopped and I started critiquing Vosh. Why? Because I immediately perceived, well, not immediately, but I perceived him to be engaging in something unethical with respect to Professor Flowers. And I started criticizing him for it on multiple streams and in a produced video that I directed directly at him. In my interactions with Doomer Politics, and he is a slimy, slimy creature, one of the principal issues that I raised, that I had with this video, was that his spurious argumentation could have the effect of giving Vosh a perfect excuse to disregard non-spurious accusations and non-spurious argumentation. And again, leading up to that, I have a backlog, an entire playlist of videos criticizing Vosh. My first one is literally called Thoughts on the Appalling Vosh, and I have his face juxtaposed on Chris Walker from Outlast. Not a flattering image. Of the two of us, Lewis, I can say with a clean conscience that I have acted only on principle, even if I have erred. Whereas I look at you and I see an abyss. There is nothing to you. Nothing. Nothing. You can't even say you're a philosophical interest. You're just a moralizing dogmatist. When pushed to actually give an account of your position, you have nothing but lists of names that you can't even categorize correctly, and waffling nonsense.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, I have no time for you as a person, personally, professionally, or otherwise. So, why didn't I debate him? I was gonna debate him. I had arranged the debate, and then he behaved in such a way as I kicked him from my server, and said I didn't want anything to do with him again.
Shall we look at that? Do you want to see exactly what was said? It's a little bit spicy. It's a little bit spicy. Let me find that for you. Here, I'm just going to put this into a place where it's easily accessible, and then we'll go through it one by one. And you can see exactly what was said. All right. All right. Now here's some useful context. When Doomer Politics published his video, Perspective Philosophy promoted it, shot it out numerous places on his channel, Signal boosted it. Within, I think, minutes of it coming out. Like, not even long enough that he had time to watch it. I think it was like an hour and some minutes long. Oh, can't open that apparently. Okay, we'll open it in Paint. We'll do that. In fact, I'll open the other one in Paint too. And then I'll just put them side by side. Okay. Just bear with me here for a second. Almost done. Almost done. Okay. So let's look at this. There we are. Okay. And we'll close that. And we'll close that. Okay, good. All right. Here we go. This was the interaction. Why is that so big? Oh, right, 'cause I expanded the photo. Okay, so we'll blow it up a bit here. All right. That's the end of the conversation. Let's scroll up. There's some cringe in here. I get weird and my language gets all melodramatic when I'm angry. But I say with respect to the video, do you want to defend this? Sorry, I should specify, this person up here is, did anyone force Vosh to talk about killing the rich or force him to act in bad faith in almost every discussion he has? What about deny the truth? The guy is a dick, the video showed him being a dick, and that's that really. This is Lewis up here. And I said, do you want to defend this? And Lewis says, what? That I think Vosh is a dick and has numerously behaved in such a way as to make that apparent. I respond that this video wasn't spuriously argued. Do you want me to walk you through it in real time and show you where you're very, very wrong? And he says, look, mate, do you really think you're going to get anywhere with me with that attitude? Nah, I'm not willing to debate you on whether the video is spuriously argued. I could not think of a better waste of time. I say that's what I thought. He's like, wow, mate, don't get sassy with me. I said, no, when are we debating objective morality? I'll just kick you for being a dick. Please do own your pet, referring to Doomer Politics. And then I leave. So he did us the favor and left. Guess he needed that for his self-esteem. So two things are there. First of all, not exactly outlandishly violent behavior on my part, I think. Secondly, dogmatically refuses, not even dogmatically, it's giving it too much dignity, refused to countenance criticism of the video. He had an emotional need to defend it. Again, probably because it destroys his credibility if he admits that he just published something with no intellectual value whatsoever. In fact, is spurious in the extreme. And then I leave. Because I have zero patience for this. This man is a liar. He is an incompetent. And he is just so fucking weak. Like, so weak. I left because I was disgusted. Oh, and I said, by the way, when are we debating objective morality? Because on the off chance he was willing to set a date and actually do that, because he was fired up, I knew I would have wiped the floor with him. Because he doesn't have a leg to stand on. He's actually just... this is not a fully developed human being. This is an infantile narcissist who has been rewarded too early. And so won't grow. Will never change.
So, would you kindly leave?
Nah, fuck you. I go where I please. I'm the president. As I say here in the chat in a moment.
Like, absolute, like, I don't know why, like, absolute grifter. Like, 100% grifter.
Not to toot my own horn. I think I'm the least grifty person in YouTube politics. I have to be. Not this guy. This guy's a fucking grifter. This guy is only a grifter. And by the way, not just on YouTube. In academia as well. This person is a philosophical incompetent because he's angling everything to selling a novelty. Nothing he does contributes to human knowledge or understanding. Nothing. And you know what? I'm not an expert in philosophy. It's not my discipline. I wouldn't even say, unless you get me really pissed off, that I'm an expert in political science. I just actually fucking try, because I actually care about the thing itself. I don't think Lewis even knows what that feels like.
I like how I'm a sophist and a fake because I don't want to engage with someone who's just unbelievably bad faith, who sold themselves for views. You know what, President Sunday, if you're watching, being ugly doesn't make you intelligent, it just makes you ugly.
Now, I'm going to interpret this charitably. Yeah, I said the word correctly. I'm going to interpret this charitably. I think he is referring to his spurious characterization of my conduct. I behaved in an ugly way. Because as nice as it would be to be licensed to point out that he looks like the corpse of my grandmother stretched out over the skeleton of Mads Mikkelsen in his grave, I'm actually perfectly fine not having the pretty boy aesthetic. I think that gives me some, street level legitimacy or whatever. No, I'm the man of the working class. I need to have some, like, ugly corners on my face. It's just racist against the Irish.
Okay. Just cry some more.
Oh, my heart. It bleeds purple porpoise pus. I'll never recover from this.
I'm actually ban this kid. I was trying to ban it. I was trying to ban it.
Foiled again. Foiled again. I almost had him. So close. Had him in my grasp. I have to have the lamest fucking enemies on the planet. Like, Jesus Christ, this is embarrassing. This is like you get superpowers and your principal antagonist is Calendar Man. Let's just fixate on this for a second. I just want to, like, Okay. Chat. Let's play a game. Let's play a game. Whoever makes the best edit of this shot, I will buy you Diablo 2. Not the remake that's $80, but I'll buy you the classic one, the good one. Come into my Discord, tag me, and put your edit there. This exact shot. Let's make him as beautiful as he ought to think he is. All right. Enough of that. Enough of that. Let's put the creepy douchebag away. How do I select this? Oh no, I don't want to select that. I want to select. There we go. Yes, yes, yes. Let's make you small again. Small PP. Yes, Wicked Energy. That picture of me as Schopenhauer was brilliant. It's just a shame one of my mods won it, because now it just looks like it's all interested in everything. He has you the same way Gabriel Syme thought he had President Sunday. Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea. What am I eating? I am eating a delicious pie from White Spot. Nothing can hurt me while I have this. Get this. President Sunday's Rogues Gallery, Perspective Philosophy, Academic Agent, Doomer Politics. My principal antagonists so far have been AA, PP, BS, Book Smarts, and DP. My channel may be small, but the gods favor me. All right, enough of this. Let's look at something educational to end off with. And granted, it's going to be a Keith Woods video, so it's going to be horribly slanted and probably quite a bit racist, in a subtle way that keeps him on YouTube. But I am actually interested in the Nemesis, or in Nemesis rather, by C.A. Bond, the Patron theory of politics. I don't know what this is. I have no acquaintance with this. The Patron theory of politics. So I'm interested. So when I come back, we're going to go through that. Sound good? What are my thoughts on sand? I love it. Sand is like one of the most clean, satisfying environments to just spread yourself out in. Darth Vader had no idea what he was talking about. Who is DP? Doomer Politics, obviously. He's DM now, so same as Demon Mama, so that doesn't help. That's not funny anymore, but... yeah. Alright. I'll be right back. Let me pop on some music. And my face, give me back my face. Get off my screen. There we go, okay. And let's do extended Deus Ex music. Yes. Be right back, guys. All right. Okay, so I have no idea what to expect here, except just a, I guess, disclaimer. Keith Woods is, of course, a white nationalist, basically the groomed replacement for Richard Spencer. I do not endorse him at all. However, sometimes he does interesting stuff. I don't know if any of this is accurate. I know his takes on Marx were atrocious. I've responded to them on my channel. Alongside Victor Magarino, who I highly recommend. Brilliant economics student. But in any case, we're looking here at something I have zero familiarity with. In fact, I may be not even up to the task of judging what he says here, because not only do I not know anything about Bond, I know nothing about Bertrand de Juvenal. So I'm coming at this with a fair degree of ignorance. So this is purely out of interest. But let's get into it. Maybe I'll have to cut it short. Like maybe this goes right off the deep end. But you know, it's been around for a few months, almost a year. It hasn't gotten him kicked off of YouTube yet, so it might actually be perfectly safe. I already gave you my thoughts on San Nicolai.
Nemesis is a book by Chris Bond which analyzes the theory of power outlined by the 20th century philosopher Bertrand de Juvenal. Juvenal's core concept is the existence of a high-low versus middle mechanism, which is the prime mover of political change throughout history.
It looks kind of like, what's his name? At least from this angle. What's that actor's name? He was in Alien. Something Hurt, I think?
Bond analyzes history using the Juvenalian model to show that not only do standard liberal accounts of power fail to explain history, but that liberalism itself paradoxically results in hyper-centralization and chronic conflict. Bond draws from Juvenal's main work On Power, the natural history of its growth. Quote, "Key to Juvenal's model is the assumption that there is a constant structure of human orders. Human orders are invariably and unavoidably centralized, and this centralized order itself breaks down into a pattern of three distinct categories. The first of these categories is a center. This center in Juvenal's conception may be occupied by an institution or institutions, or importantly, it may not be occupied by something corporeal. Regardless of whether this center is occupied, all human orders are invariably focused around this shared center of attention. As a result, this center is the most important aspect of this model, as it is the relationship of all other categories to this center, and subsequently to the other categories of this order that infuses this model with regularity.
Constant structure of human orders. Human orders are invariably and unavoidably centralized. And the centralized order itself breaks down into a pattern of three distinct categories. Okay, so this is just category 1. That's the center, okay. And it might be occupied by something non-corporeal.
So, the Juvenal's model breaks society down into three distinct categories. There is the center, which Bond just outlined quite well, and then there is the subsidiaries. Now, the subsidiaries are the delegates of the center that act under its authority. You can think of families, corporations, trade unions, many other examples. The nature of the subsidiary is to be the resistance against the expansion of the central power. The Juvenal criticizes liberal models which overlook the subsidiary's relationship to the central power, writing, "The mistake of not seeing in society more than one power, i.e. the governmental or public authority, has an astonishingly wide vogue, whereas in fact the governmental is but one of the authorities present in societies. There exists alongside it a whole host of others, which are at once its collaborators in that they help it securing social order, and rivals in that, like it, they claim men's obedience and inveigle them into their service.
I have no idea what this word inveigle means. Whereas the governmental is but one of the authorities present in society. Okay, so here's an immediate issue I take. Key to Juvenal's model is the assumption that there is a constant structure of human orders. The category society is not constant. The idea that there is just a thinking, communicating public of atomized people that has its own causality, and that's identified with the people, that is not ubiquitous historically at all. I think that is arguably, strictly speaking, a liberal conception. So there's a little bit of fuzziness going on here where, again, like I haven't read the book myself, but just judging from these quotations, it appears as if he is projecting, again, modern forms backwards in time. Which is fairly par for the course. That's not like a particular, I mean, it's a serious error, but like even Hobbes does it. Let's go back a little bit here.
Embodied in institutions, it's in the nature of power that it becomes selfish, predatory, and expansionary, which in general is governed by subsidiary power. The periphery is always the largest element, the poor, the proletariat, the masses, and is always presented as oppressed and needing representation from whatever actor is forming an alliance with it. The periphery often becomes a useful asset for centres of power because it consists of a large pool of willing participants in potential conflicts. The formal reason for an alliance between the centre and the periphery is usually justified as furthering equality. Once the centre has become embodied in institutions, it's in the nature of power that it becomes selfish, predatory, and...
This is like a basic account of tyranny. So, classically, the distinction between a tyrant and a king is that the king comes to power through religious right. So there is an institution, and the institution selects somebody to occupy the decision-making place, the executive part, and they do so. Whereas a tyrant uses promises to some other part of the community to join him to overpower those institutions and to change society. So they rule, maybe even more absolutely than the king does, or maybe even slightly less. Tyrants can be benevolent, or relatively benign, I should say. But definitionally, they don't have a right to be there. If that makes sense.
Expansionary. However, power also always has a social nature, something which the Juvenal claims liberal models often overlook. In Juvenal's words, the nature of this power is, quote, at once the symbol of the community, its mystical core, its cohesive force, its sustaining virtue. But it is also ambition for itself, the exploitation of society, the will to power, the use of the national resources for the purposes of prestige and adventure. So power is at once social and self-serving, and to further its power, the central power often makes appeals to the periphery to engage in subversive conflict against subsidiaries.
Did anybody see the infrared debate on modern day debate? I saw the ending of it. And I have to say, like, his interlocutor was a nutball. I don't know who the hell he was. Just some racist imbecile. But Hawes, when Hawes is calm and he's like, he has the right interlocutor, he can be a beast. I would not underestimate Hawes. I think a lot of the company he keeps is silly, like Jackson Hinkle is objectively ridiculous, but Hawes, he does some silly stuff. He said some silly stuff, but I would definitely take him seriously.
And this is where Juvenal's model provides an advantage over the liberal model, giving us a way to observe power as primary means of expansion in politics. The liberal model assumes that subsidiaries are in alliance with the centre, usually working in tandem against the individual. And this is the basis for all modern political thought, really, whether it's liberalism or Marxism or other theories. In the juvenile
Hang on a sec. What's the basis for all modern political thought?
and self-serving
Here.
nature, something which the Juvenal claims liberal models often overlook. In Juvenal's words, the nature of this power is, quote, at once the symbol of the community, its mystical core, its
Oh god, I missed so much. I don't even know what he's talking about here. Hang on.
pool of willing participants in potential conflicts. The formal reason for an alliance between the centre and the periphery is usually justified as furthering equality. Once the centre has become embodied in institutions, it's in the nature of power that it becomes selfish, predatory, and expansionary. However, power also always has a social nature, something which the Juvenal claims liberal models often overlook. In Juvenal's words, the nature of this power is, quote, at once the symbol.
So this is interesting. So the center is entirely non-concrete. The periphery refers to actual people. But the center, this is, there's almost something of the city of God from Augustine in this, isn't there? It's like, it moves through the world like a pilgrim kind of thing. That's interesting. So you'd think of it almost like if you've played war games like Warhammer or whatever. You use like transparent templates to show like blast radiuses, right? And that's sort of the level of abstraction that this center in Juvenal, where that exists. And it sort of emanates downwards in a cone to like concrete reality. Okay, that's interesting. So we're not dealing with something concrete here by the center. We're talking simply about like an analytic category. It's just something that has those characteristics or has the appropriate characteristics vis-a-vis some other things. That's the center. Okay. Okay, I can work with that.
So having established the basics of the Juvenalian model, Bond now attempts to apply the model to historical case studies. In his original work, Juvenal focused on the growth of European monarchies, which increased their power over the medieval period at the expense of subsidiary powers like lords, barons, and the church itself. Quote, Juvenal shows quite clearly that this expansion was achieved by appealing to the rest of the structure that was governed by these subsidiary centres, and by directing popular sentiment against them. Following the Juvenalian model, monarchs used alliances with the commoners and foreign elements such as Jewish and Italian bankers or foreign mercenaries to weaken the power of subsidiaries and centralise power throughout the medieval and early modern period. Following a survey of the centralisation of power by monarchs under the Juvenalian model, Bond looks to the modern era for a case study where this model can give us better understanding of political developments than liberal orthodoxy. The case study is human rights. According to Bond, human rights have gone through three major developments. The first was the 18th century explication of these rights as self-evident, as in the Declaration of Independence. These self-evident rights were used to undermine the authority of...
No. That's not human rights. Human rights are emergent from colonialism when you had theologians like Vittoria criticizing people like the conquistadors for treating people beyond the line, like in the New World, as without the rights due, or without the dignity due to one of God's creations. You know, they weren't treating them as human beings. Human rights doctrine goes back that far. When we're talking about the Declaration of the Rights of Man, or the Bill of Rights, or all these things, like rights in the American and the English context, these are the rights of the citizen. These aren't human rights. Case in point, America still had slaves, right? So,
of the monarchy, and in the case of the United States, to undermine individual states' rights in the name of the people. The second major development came with the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, drawn up in the wake of World War II by a globalist elite with aspirations of world governance. Quote,
globalist elite, we know what he's talking about.
that it should appeal to all of humanity, and should design to grant to all equality as well as a newly minted collective identity, seems very much like a repetition of James Madison's invention of the American people. In this case, it is not the sovereignty of individual continental states being targeted, but rather that of nation-states.
Yeah, so this is historically illiterate. If you want to actually get a good history of human rights, my recommendations are Carl Schmitt, Talal Asad. Talal Asad actually has some lectures on YouTube that go into this. Maybe I'll post them to the Discord. Maybe I'll watch them on stream sometime. They're very good, and Talal Asad has the perfect ASMR voice. He sounds like he actually sounds kind of like the architect from The Matrix. That'd be a good one. But this is bad. It's the kind of crap Imperium Press would generally publish. They do publish some good things, which pains me because I can't buy them because I can't give money to Nazis just to get a nice copy of Fustel de Collage. But they do have a nice copy of Fustel de Collage, and it hurts.
The final stage in the development of human rights is one much less recognized than the other two, and occurred in the early 1970s. A review of Google Ngram for the term human rights shows a massive increase in the spread of the term beginning in this period. Therefore, if the Juvenalian model is correct, it should be possible to pinpoint a Juvenalian conflict at this time, and the adoption of human rights language by a set of institutions as a means to undermine other centers of power.
That is really tenuous.
And this, in fact, is the case. We find that at this time, elites in the UN and specific elements of the US power structure began to focus on human rights as a way to undermine the legitimacy of Latin American dictatorships, communist regimes, and the foreign policy of then-President Richard Nixon. Bond claims that, in line with the Juvenalian model, human rights were not first devised and then implemented. They were raised to prominence by the needs of particular actors in the midst of conflict. Quoting from a book called Understanding US Human Rights Policy, A Paradoxical Legacy, the author writes, US human rights policy was not an intentionally planned strategy. Congress saddled presidential foreign and domestic policy initiatives with human rights.
Yeah, we get the idea. So this is garbage. That's disappointing. I was hoping it would be interesting, but it's just the typical stuff. So I'm dead tired, but I'll briefly go over what's going on here, just at a formal level, because this is all formal. What I've noticed a lot of right-wing attempts at political theory do is they're basically incapable of doing actual critical history. So what they'll do is they'll actually do what Hobbes does, but much worse. So Hobbes's mistake was he looked at human beings around him and how they behaved in modernity, for his modernity, and he said, okay, given how human beings are, what would have had to have happened for them to have gotten here? And then he writes a history of mankind, and he's upfront about what he's doing. Like, he is reading into the present. Sorry, he is reading into the past how people are in the present. But that nonetheless forms the basis of his conjectural history of human beings and in his framing of the state of nature, and that part's important. Because as Rousseau points out, the problem with Hobbes characterizing the state of nature as a war of all against all is that the drives that would bring us into conflict with each other in a state of nature are not themselves natural. We don't have, for example, amour propre, the idea of a sense of worth that is apart from our bodily existence. If somebody steals from us in a state of nature, Rousseau conjectures, we don't necessarily feel like our ego has been offended or our dignity has been affronted. We just want our thing back. And if we perceive that there is danger in getting it back, more often than not, we'll simply go our separate ways. We'll just walk away from it. It's not worth it. We'll find our own tree, right? And that's why Hobbes fails when he does it. Now, what people like this do is they'll go, okay, I don't have a good grounding in history. However, I can analyze the stuff around me, and I'm going to make a descriptive system to explain it. I notice these dynamics. I'm going to draw a circle around it. Okay, cool. That's one element, and this element, as a whole, has a certain relationship with this other thing. And we can see like what appear to be the limits of that influence. You can see here's another element, and you make these complex schematics that way, like these huge schemes with all of these parts moving around. You make these ingenious systems by which to understand dynamics, and sometimes they're very fruitful by themselves. They can be salvaged, like there is valid reasoning going on there. But instead of doing the hard work of understanding how they came about historically, they go, oh, golly gee, look at this system. I can understand everything now. And they just take that, and that's now the lens through which they see every part of history. In fact, they don't even bother to look at history, because baked into this system they've made is an explanation of everything, which means they don't even have to try. And to the extent that they do, they just force everything into the mold. And it's not good. That's not how you get actual knowledge of politics. That is how you concoct stories. And there's a lot of political work like this, even by more respectable people. International relations theory is full of this. Thucydides' trap is an excellent example. Although that one's more a misreading of a past account as opposed to a misreading of the present. Or rather, I should say, a reading of the present inappropriately projected onto the past. I'm sorry, really quick, what edition of Classics of Western Philosophy do you have? This is the 3rd edition. I don't even remember where I got this from. I think I might have been given this for free, actually. But it's good. Hackett's got some good stuff. Yeah, this isn't great.
Mandates in order to restrain the immoral, if not illegal, behavior of an imperial president. To do so, the Democrat-dominated Congress often voted to withhold funds for foreign programs and began hearings on a subcommittee on international organizations. These hearings were justified on the basis of concern over rampant violations of human rights. And the result of these hearings was a report entitled Human Rights in the World Community, a call for US leadership, which led to the creation of the Office of Coordinator for Humanitarian Affairs and called for greater promotion of the concept of human rights in the UN and beyond. So we can see that the conflict that created the growth of human rights was an institutional conflict, where elements of the US regime were engaged in conflict with each other. Nixon, influenced by Kissinger, was carrying out standard state-to-state diplomacy. The US Congress, the State Department, and elements of the UN engaged in a subversive appeal to the periphery through the promotion of international human rights. And this group was also heavily bolstered by the work of NGOs. And this is another area often overlooked by liberal analysis, is the role of non-governmental organizations like the Ford Foundation, like the Open Society Foundation, and so on. And NGOs, in this case, most prominently the Ford Foundation, became a means by which the elite connected with the Democrat Party faction could institutionalize human...
That's not really true. The problem with... I'm not even addressing Keith at this point because this analysis is just botched. And I'm tired, so I'm not going to go through and pick apart all the little black boxes in his reasoning. Which seem to be bonds as well, so I wouldn't necessarily hold Keith culpable for that, even though he's culpable for a lot else. The critical flaw in liberal theories of politics is that they're strictly speaking internalistic. They overly focus on the correct relations between atomized subjects, and they think that politics is entirely contained within that, and as a result they tend to dogmatically treat like the normal situation that allows politics to take place on that understanding, like electoral politics, stuff like that. They treat that as if it's simply the how to put it, as if that is simply an emanation of good government within, like correctly following the laws, create stability, yada yada yada. And there's a strong tendency to ignore the fact that, and this is again like a major part of Schmitt's critique, which I think is very compelling. It ignores the fact that normal space is always established and sustained by some kind of violent and specifically arbitrary force. Because you need to maintain, against all pressures, inside and out, that normalcy, that space. You need to maintain. You need to place it, and you need to maintain it. And if you choose to refer that to blind laws or blind principles or whatever, then they'll run their course, and eventually the whole thing will explode. Which is, of course, what happened with Weimar, which is why we have so much literature now, even from people as spurious as Karl Popper on like the paradox of intolerance kind of thing. Like we have this principle of being accepting and tolerant of other ideas, but people who have these ideas, if they continue to have these ideas and are allowed to air them, are going to destroy the community. What do? Well, it's very simple. You make an exception. That's what rationality in politics ultimately boils down to. like obviously like blind rules can have a rationality about them, but like the rationality needs to be of the community, not of an artifact that emanates from the community, right? Like not just of the laws. The laws have to be coming from the people. If they're just a thing you're chained to, then you're not really free. Anyways, it's very late. I am dead tired. I'm crashing so hard right now. And we've been going for, oh good god, it's 8:30. We've been going for almost 4 hours. So I'm going to call it here. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. PST, I am going to be having on Chud Logic, Zan Z, and Jalma Bayorn to discuss Squid Game. So look forward to that. And yeah, maybe a surprise guest, maybe not. We'll see. But yeah, so I'll definitely see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Have a good night. I'll upload the segments of this later. Probably not the whole Nemesis segment because it just wasn't that good. But there were some comments on Hobbes I think would be useful to isolate, so I'll do that. But yeah, have a good night, folks. Take care.